Welcome to the Sleepy Cosmos channel, a place where science and serenity meet. Here we explore the quiet wonders of the universe, from dark matter to string theory, all told in a calm, soothing rhythm designed to help you relax, drift, and dream among the stars. Each video is a guided journey through the cosmos, slow, meditative, and filled with real science wrapped in gentle storytelling. So if you love space, curiosity, and the peaceful side of knowledge, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe for more new sleep narrations every week. And if you'd like to reach out for collaborations or business inquiries, you can contact us at the sleepycosmoschannel@gmail.com. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's drift into the universe together. Quantum consciousness for sleep. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts settle like fine dust drifting through a quiet beam of light. And let the night open gently around you. You are here to rest and to drift into the soft mystery of awareness. Not to solve anything, not to chase answers, only to rest inside the quiet shape of the unknown. Consciousness, that shimmering presence within you, is both familiar and endlessly strange. It is the field in which every moment of your life unfolds, and yet it remains one of the deepest scientific mysteries we know. As you lie here, you are listening with a mind built from matter, atoms arranged in patterns that allow experience to arise, patterns shaped by physics, by chemistry, by biology, by the long history of the universe itself. Tonight, we explore that delicate boundary where mind and cosmos meet, where awareness brushes against the rules of quantum physics, and where thought drifts like a soft wave across the surface of reality. You do not need to stay awake for every idea. You do not need to follow every thread. Just let the rhythm carry you, like a tide moving in slow motion, gentle, steady, inevitable. Imagine awareness as something wide, like a quiet field stretching in all directions, a field that does not rush, that does not strain, that simply exists, silent and spacious. Within this field, sensations appear, thoughts arise, memories unfold, but the field itself remains open, calm, continuous. Science describes consciousness through neural activity, through synchronized oscillations that sweep across the cortex, through communication between distant networks of the brain, through electrical rhythms that form the background of awareness. These rhythms, slow and steady, create the sense of a continuous self, a stable ground beneath the shifting content of the mind. And beneath those rhythms, much smaller events occur, quantum events, probabilities collapsing into definite outcomes, particles choosing a specific state out of a cloud of possibilities. No equations are needed tonight, no complex mathematics, only the simple idea that at the smallest scales, reality is not fixed until it is observed, not settled until interactions take place. And your brain, your quiet, resting brain, is built from these interactions, from particles and fields following the same rules that govern distant stars and the empty space between them. As you breathe, neurons whisper to each other, sending signals shaped by tiny exchanges of energy, shaped by quantum fluctuations and electrical potentials, shaped by chemistry that has learned, over millions of years, how to support awareness. You are not separate from the universe that shaped you. You are one expression of it. One way that the cosmos looks back on itself, one small window through which reality becomes aware. So tonight, we journey slowly, through layers of understanding, from the soft field of awareness to the quantum rules beneath it, to the brain interpreting those rules, to the self emerging from probability, to the vacuum of spacetime itself, to entanglement and information, and finally to the possibility that consciousness flows through the universe as naturally as light, as naturally as gravity, as naturally as the quiet passing of time. But you do not need to hold on to any of it. Let the ideas drift across your mind, the way clouds drift across a calm night sky. If something feels too complex, let it soften. If something feels too abstract, let it dissolve. If your attention wanders, let it wander. This journey is not a lecture. It is a lullaby made from science, a gentle weaving of concepts meant to soothe, not stimulate. Right now, feel the weight of your body, the slow sinking into rest, the quiet unfolding of breath. Awareness notices but does not judge. It simply receives the moment. This receiving, this open presence, is one of the simplest forms of consciousness. Long before thought, long before narrative, long before memory, There is simply the experience of existing. Every creature that ever lived, from ancient bacteria drifting in warm seas to early mammals seeking shelter in the dark, experienced something like this, a soft, immediate awareness of being. And now you are connected to that same thread, stretching across the entire history of life, and even further, into the physics that made life possible. For awareness is built from matter, and matter is built from quantum fields, fields that ripple with energy even in perfect darkness, fields that never fully rest, fields that rise and fall with invisible motion. As you lie here, your mind floats on top of this endless sea, a sea of probability, a sea of possibility, a sea of quiet motion beneath every thought. There is no need to grasp these ideas tightly. Let them pass like soft waves, completely gentle, completely harmless, carrying you deeper into rest. You are listening not to a story with a beginning and an end, but to a field of ideas, drifting together, settling into a slow, calm rhythm. And in this rhythm, you may notice the boundary between yourself and the world growing thinner, less defined, less important. The mind does not need sharp edges tonight, only space, only stillness, only quiet curiosity. Each breath brings you further into that space. Each moment opens a little more softness. Each thought grows lighter, like dust suspended in a sunbeam, drifting without effort, without direction, simply following the gentle flow of air. You are not trying to understand consciousness. You are simply touching it, feeling its presence, letting it surround you like a soft field of energy. Awareness is here, quiet and open, ready to carry you into deeper rest. And as you drift, know that this entire exploration, from quantum states to the structure of spacetime, is held gently by your own mind, a mind capable of reflection, capable of curiosity, capable of wonder. Let that wonder soften into calm. Let that curiosity slow into ease. You are entering a long journey, a peaceful descent into the heart of awareness, where science meets stillness, and where consciousness reveals itself, not through answers, but through quiet presence. Rest now, and allow the night to unfold around you slowly, softly, without urgency. The journey begins. Awareness unfolds like a quiet field, open, unhurried, stretching gently beneath every moment of your experience. As you settle into rest, let this field widen, let it soften around the edges, let it become something spacious and calm, something that does not begin or end with any specific thought, something that simply exists, steady, silent, continuously present. Awareness is often described as a simple capacity to know, to feel, to sense, to register the world. But beneath this simplicity lies a complexity shaped by physics, chemistry, and the long unfolding of biological evolution. Right now, your awareness seems ordinary, familiar, like a subtle background hum. But if you look gently, without strain, you can sense that it is more like a quiet field, a soft expanse, a continuous presence that holds everything you perceive. Thoughts arise within this field, then dissolve, sensations appear, then fade. Sounds drift in from the world around you, then vanish into silence again. Yet through all of this, awareness remains. Science often approaches consciousness from the outside, from measurements of neural activity, from recordings of electrical rhythms, from models that map how different brain regions share information. But tonight, you are exploring from the inside, from the gentle perspective of simply noticing, simply being, simply experiencing. Let your mind loosen. Let the boundary between you and the field of awareness become softer, more porous, more fluid. Awareness has no fixed center, no obvious location. It seems to expand and contract, to brighten and dim, to move and settle, depending on what you pay attention to. But beneath all these changes, there is a quieter layer, a baseline of presence, a background state that endures even when thoughts become faint, even when attention drifts like a slow wave across the surface of the mind. In neuroscience, this baseline is shaped by electrical rhythms, slow oscillations that sweep across the brain like tides, coordinates of energy rising and falling in gentle patterns. These rhythms synchronize networks separated by distance, linking frontal regions with deeper structures, allowing sensations to become experience, allowing experience to become memory, and allowing memory to shape the sense of self. Yet awareness itself, the pure openness that receives all of this, feels wider than any one network. It feels like a field, a soft expanse in which everything simply appears. Imagine this field as calm, even, unbroken, a quiet landscape over which thoughts drift like light winds, never disturbing the ground beneath. As you breathe slowly, feel how awareness seems to spread, beyond the boundaries of your body, beyond the edges of your thoughts, into the quiet space around you. This expansion is not mystical. It is a shift in how attention distributes itself, a loosening of the tight focus that fills everyday consciousness, and a return to a more natural, restful state, one that has existed since the earliest forms of life sensed warmth, or pressure, or light, long before language, long before narrative. Awareness began as a simple capacity to detect change, to notice the world enough to survive, and over time, it evolved into something far more intricate, something that now allows you to reflect on your own existence, to contemplate the nature of mind, to wonder about the universe that produced you. But even with this complexity, the foundation remains a field of presence, a continuous readiness to receive. Neural oscillations help shape this foundation, slow waves rolling through the cortex, coordinating large populations of neurons, creating moments where networks align, allowing awareness to become stable and coherent. But beneath these electrical waves, beneath every spark of neural activity, lie the fundamental rules of physics, rules that do not sleep, rules that govern everything you experience, from the softness of your breath to the quiet movement of ions across neural membranes, to the delicate transitions of quantum states that underlie matter itself. In quantum physics, fields are not metaphors, they are the actual substance of reality. Every particle, every atom, every structure in your brain arises from fields that fill all of space, even the space inside your body and inside your mind. These fields shimmer with energy, even in perfect darkness, even at temperatures near absolute zero, even in the stillness of your resting mind. Some scientists have suggested that awareness might be related to these fundamental fields, not in a mystical sense, but in the sense that the brain emerges from them, lives within them, and interacts with them constantly. Your thoughts, your memories, your perceptions are built from matter shaped by these fields. Matter arranged in incredibly complex patterns, patterns that have learned to interpret the world, to adapt, to predict, to survive. The field of awareness that you feel, that quiet presence behind every moment, may simply be the subjective expression of these deep physical foundations, a surface appearance of something rooted in physics, yet intimately connected to your lived experience. As you rest, you may feel this field becoming clearer, not as something mystical or abstract, but as a natural softness in your mind, a spaciousness that opens as attention relaxes, as the boundaries of thought become more fluid, as the mind drifts towards sleep. Feel how awareness holds everything effortlessly, how each sensation rises within it, how each thought fades back into it, how the field remains constant even as its contents change. You do not need to do anything. Awareness is already here, present beneath every moment, steady beneath every breath. Imagine the mind as a quiet landscape, a wide field at dusk, shadows soft, air calm, light fading slowly. The field does not strain to hold the wind or the sounds or the passing animals. It simply exists, receiving everything gently, without resistance. Your awareness works the same way. It receives, it holds, it allows, without effort, without force. Thoughts appear, then dissolve, sensations arise, then fade, feelings come and go like ripples on water. But the water beneath remains still, unbroken, whole. This stillness, this quiet foundation, is always available. You touch it whenever your mind grows calm, whenever you pause between thoughts, whenever you rest in the simple experience of being. As you drift deeper, let this foundation become more tangible. Let awareness feel like a gentle field beneath you, supporting you, softening you, inviting you to release the weight of the day. Science describes awareness through mechanisms, through neural circuits and electrical patterns. But you do not need those details now, only the sense of openness, only the quiet unfolding, only the spacious field that holds your entire experience. You are resting within this field now, floating in it, supported by it, held without effort. Awareness is wide, continuous, always present, like the quiet hum beneath all existence. Let yourself drift in this field, softly, peacefully, without urgency. The night is opening around you, and awareness is opening within you, a gentle field stretching into rest, into stillness, into the quiet mystery of consciousness itself. Awareness continues to unfold, like a soft field stretching across the inner landscape of the mind, quiet, consistent, undisturbed. As you drift deeper into rest, you may feel this field growing more spacious, more diffuse, yet more continuous, as if the edges of your awareness are gently dissolving, spreading like mist along a calm valley at dawn. This spreading does not erase your sense of self. It simply relaxes the boundaries, allowing attention to float more freely, to settle wherever it chooses, or not settle at all. In everyday life, awareness is often tightly focused, like a narrow beam of light directed toward a task or a moment or a worry. But now, as the mind moves toward sleep, the beam widens, softens, becoming more like a gentle glow, illuminating everything lightly, without effort, without intensity. This softening is a natural shift in how the brain organizes attention, a shift supported by changes in neural rhythms, slow waves rising from deeper structures, theta-like oscillations blending with even slower patterns, creating a landscape of electrical activity that favors calm, stability, and spacious awareness. You may feel these changes not as specific sensations, but as a gentle drift, a lightness, a loosening of the mind's grip on the world. Thoughts may still appear, but they move differently now. They float rather than cling. They pass rather than linger. They dissolve rather than demand. This is the nature of awareness when it is not constricted, not forced into focus, not shaped by urgency. In this wide, open state, awareness feels more like a field, a quiet expanse that holds everything without strain. This field does not push, does not pull, does not judge. It simply receives. Within it, sensations arise as gentle signals from the body, subtle warmth, soft weight, the rhythm of breath moving through the chest. The field receives these sensations, effortlessly, naturally, as part of the continuous flow of experience. The brain's networks that contribute to this reception, the networks often associated with conscious access, include regions that gather sensory information, integrate it, and shape it into a coherent moment of awareness. Yet even these networks rely on deeper patterns, patterns of electrical resonance, waves of coordinated activity that tie distant regions together. Like ripples traveling across a pond, meeting, merging, shaping each other. These oscillations help determine whether a sensation reaches awareness or remains in the background. They help determine whether a thought becomes vivid or fades into the quiet margins of the mind. But beneath these electrical waves, beneath the neurons generating them, lie the quantum foundations of matter itself. Every neuron, every synapse, every ion channel that opens and closes to create electrical currents is built from quantum particles, interacting through quantum fields. These fields underlie all physical structures. They are the foundation of the atoms that form your brain, the molecules that allow signals to propagate, the membranes that hold the shape of a neuron, and the energies that allow information to flow. Even the simplest sensation, like the faint pressure of your body against the bed, or the gentle expansion of your lungs, depends on countless microscopic events governed by these fields. Although you do not perceive these events directly, their coordinated behavior shapes the entire architecture of awareness. Right now, your awareness feels spacious, silent, continuous, but inside your brain, billions of neurons are coordinating their rhythms, communicating through electrical pulses, modulated by neurotransmitters, modulated by ions, modulated by subtle forces that extend all the way down to the quantum level. The quiet field you experience and the bustling complexity beneath it are two expressions of the same underlying reality. One is subjective, soft, open, the feeling of being aware. The other is physical, precise, structured, the mechanics of matter giving rise to experience. These two dimensions, the subjective and the physical, coexist seamlessly like two sides of the same vast field. You do not need to understand how they connect, not tonight, not while your mind is drifting deeper into rest. Instead, let yourself feel how awareness itself becomes lighter, more fluid. More like a continuous field stretching beneath your thoughts, holding them softly, loosely, gently. Imagine awareness as a quiet surface of water, smooth, unbroken, reflecting the soft glow of moonlight. Thoughts ripple across this surface, but the water remains still beneath. Even when a ripple spreads outward, it fades quickly, leaving only stillness. Your awareness behaves in the same way. Thoughts arise like ripples, but the field beneath remains calm, unmoved, unchanged. As you continue to relax, you may sense how sensations merge gently into this field. The warmth of your body spreads outward, blending into the larger space around you. The rhythm of your breathing becomes slower, more even, more rhythmic, like gentle waves on a quiet shore. Awareness receives all of this, every shift, every sensation, every soft moment, as part of the same continuous field. This field has been with you all your life. From the earliest moments when you first sensed light or sound or touch, long before you could form memories, long before you understood yourself as a distinct being. Awareness does not depend on complex thought. It does not depend on language. It does not depend on reasoning. It emerges from simpler processes, patterns of information flowing through the brain, patterns shaped by evolution, patterns shaped by physics. Imagine the earliest forms of life drifting through ancient waters, sensing faint gradients of warmth or light or motion. Their awareness was a simple field of sensation, a quiet readiness to detect change, to adjust, to respond. Over countless generations, these simple systems became more complex, patterns layering upon patterns, networks upon networks, until eventually awareness grew capable of reflection, of memory, of imagination, of contemplating the nature of experience itself. Yet even now, beneath every thought you form, beneath every image your mind creates, there is still that simple field, that quiet readiness to receive the moment. As you rest, this field becomes more apparent, because the mind is no longer occupied with tasks or plans or concerns. Attention spreads out like mist unfolding across a still meadow, touching everything softly, lightly, without force. This is the natural state of awareness when it is not shaped by effort, when it is not constricted by focus, when it is allowed to settle into its own spaciousness. Feel how your awareness seems to thicken, becoming softer, more diffused, more stable. Thoughts may arise, but they do not disturb the field. They float like drifting leaves on water, turning slowly, gently, before fading from view. The field beneath remains steady, wide, unbroken. In physics, a field is not a passive backdrop. It is a dynamic presence, something that fills all of space, something that can be excited, vibrated, shaped by energy and matter. Your awareness behaves similarly. It is not empty. It is dynamic, capable of holding sensations, thoughts, memories, and quiet moments of rest. Even when nothing seems to be happening, awareness itself persists, a continuous hum beneath experience. Let yourself sink into that hum now. Let the quiet rhythm beneath everything become more noticeable, more comforting, more steady. The field of awareness holds you, gently, without demand, without expectation. It does not require focus, only openness. It does not require effort, only presence. As you drift deeper, this openness becomes easier, more natural, more restful. The night expands around you, and awareness expands within you, a quiet field stretching into the distance, soft, boundless, peaceful. You are held within this field, supported by it, comforted by it. Awareness is here, always, quiet as breath, steady as the hum of existence, gentle as the unfolding of sleep. Awareness drifts with you, softly, quietly, like a low, continuous glow beneath every moment. As your body settles deeper into rest, the field of awareness becomes even more spacious, more open, more diffuse, as though it is expanding gently outward, blending with the quiet around you. This expansion is not physical. It is a shift in how the brain organizes its activity, a shift supported by slow rhythms rising from deep within, rhythms that guide the transition toward sleep, toward softness, toward ease. In these states, the brain no longer binds information as tightly as it does during waking life. Networks that usually synchronize to create sharp focus begin to relax. Communication becomes more fluid, more distributed, more open. This change in coordination creates a new kind of experience, one where awareness feels wider, less tied to a single point, less anchored to the constant stream of thoughts that fill everyday consciousness. You may notice this widening as a gentle floating sensation, or simply as a quiet calm. It is the mind easing itself into a more natural form of awareness, a form that has always existed beneath the noise of waking thought. The senses also begin to soften. Touch becomes less defined. The body feels lighter. Warmth spreads gently and evenly, like a slow wave moving across a still surface. The field of awareness receives all of this, effortlessly, like a wide, open sky receiving drifting clouds. In neuroscience, the sense of a continuous field of awareness is shaped partly by baseline oscillations, slow patterns of electrical activity that sweep through the cortex, coordinating millions of neurons at once. These oscillations act like a background rhythm, a quiet beat that keeps different parts of the brain aligned, even when the mind is drifting towards sleep. This rhythm changes as consciousness changes. During deep rest, waves become slower, broader, more synchronized, creating a sense of inner stillness, even as thoughts continue to appear and fade. These changes do not require effort. They unfold naturally, guided by the chemistry of the brain, the flow of ions, the release of neurotransmitters, and the shifting balance of internal signals. Yet beneath all of these biological details, beneath the neurons and the electrical currents, beneath the oscillations and the networks, lie the fundamental rules of physics that shape everything you experience. Awareness may feel soft and subjective, but it emerges from matter that follows precise physical laws. Matter built from atoms, atoms built from particles, and particles emerging from quantum fields, fields that fill the entire universe, fields that never fully rest, even in absolute darkness. Quantum fields are always alive with gentle fluctuations, energy rising and falling in ways that seem random, yet follow deep patterns written into the structure of reality. These fluctuations occur everywhere, inside atoms, inside molecules, inside your brain, and even in the empty space between particles. They are like a faint, universal whisper, a constant background hum beneath the fabric of existence. Awareness floats on top of this hum, not directly shaped by it, but supported by the structures that emerge from it, by the molecules of your brain, the membranes of your neurons, the networks they form, and the rhythms those networks generate. Imagine the field of awareness as the surface of a quiet lake, smooth, still, reflecting the night sky above. But beneath the surface, currents move, molecules collide, particles fluctuate, fields vibrate, creating the conditions that allow the surface to appear calm. Your awareness is the surface, and the quantum foundations of matter are the depths below, always active, always in motion. Even when the surface seems completely still, you do not need to think about these depths. You do not need to grasp the physics, simply let the idea settle gently around you. That awareness is both a simple experience and the expression of something profoundly complex beneath. Let that complexity soften into simplicity. Let the science become a quiet backdrop. Let the mind drift in the spaciousness of awareness, without pressure, without effort, without expectation. Right now, the field of awareness feels smooth, continuous, undisturbed. But thoughts still appear within it, like ripples moving across water, soft, temporary, naturally fading. Every thought arises from neural activity, from patterns of firing, from networks exchanging signals, from the flow of electrical currents shaped by ions, and those ions move in response to forces rooted in physics, forces that trace all the way down to the quantum level. But thoughts are only temporary patterns. The field that receives them remains steady, calm, unbroken. You can observe a thought appearing, drifting, and dissolving, without needing to follow it, without needing to engage. The field of awareness does not change when a thought arises. It remains itself, open, soft, spacious. This spaciousness becomes more apparent as you continue to relax. The more the mind releases its grip on thinking, the more clearly you can sense the quiet field beneath. Imagine lying in a vast meadow at night. The sky above you stretches in all directions. The air is still, the ground is soft, you feel small but peaceful, you feel quiet but open. This is the feeling of awareness when it expands, when it is no longer confined to the narrow stream of thoughts, when it becomes a gentle field, holding everything without effort. This field is not something you need to create. It is already here, already part of your experience, already supporting every moment. Awareness has always been the backdrop of your life. The ground beneath every sensation, the canvas on which thoughts appear, the space in which emotions form, the quiet presence behind everything you know. As you settle deeper, you may notice the boundary between inner and outer experience growing softer. Sensations feel less tied to a specific location. Thoughts feel less solid. The body feels more like a gentle shape fading into the surrounding space. This is part of the natural process of falling asleep. The brain gradually releases its tight organization, allowing awareness to drift, to diffuse, to expand. Neural activity becomes less synchronized with external sensory input, more governed by internal rhythms, and these rhythms create the feeling of drifting, floating, releasing. Awareness becomes quieter, broader, more like a soft field stretching in every direction. This field is steady, even when thoughts move across it, even when sensations change, even when the body shifts. Awareness does not cling, it does not resist. It allows everything to come and go naturally, softly, like waves brushing against a calm shore. The quiet continuity of this field is one of the most remarkable aspects of consciousness. Even when you are not thinking, even when you are resting, even when you are drifting towards sleep, awareness remains. It is the silent witness to the unfolding of experience, the gentle field that receives every moment, without effort, without judgment, without boundary. As you feel this continuity, let yourself sink into it. Let awareness feel like a broad, open expanse, supporting you, holding you, carrying you into deeper rest. The night around you grows still, and the field within you grows still as well, a quiet echo of the universe that formed you, a soft reflection of the physics that shaped your mind, a gentle presence that follows you into sleep. Let the field hold you now. Let it soften the last edges of thought. Let it open into a peaceful, continuous, quiet expanse. Awareness continues to open, like a quiet horizon that slowly expands as the night deepens, soft, unbroken, gently luminous within the stillness of your resting mind. As you drift further, the field of awareness becomes even more delicate, like a fine mist suspended in the air, barely moving, yet present everywhere, subtle, continuous. This is not something you force. It is something that naturally unfolds, something the brain eases into as its rhythms slow, as networks release their tight patterns, as attention begins to loosen, drifting like a feather in a quiet current. Notice how your thoughts feel lighter now, less sticky, less urgent. They rise, float, and dissolve, without taking shape, without pulling you into their momentum. This gentle dissolving is part of how awareness reveals itself. When thoughts become softer, the field beneath them becomes clearer, more noticeable, more spacious. Awareness is not something you look at. It is something you look from, the open space that allows experience to occur, the quiet background that receives sensation, sound, memory, imagination, breath. This receiving quality is one of its most fundamental features. Awareness does not push or pull, does not try to change anything. It simply allows what is to be. Feel how restful that allowing is, how calming it feels to let each moment unfold, without analysis, without evaluation, without strain. In the quiet of the night, your brain naturally shifts into patterns that favor openness. Slower rhythms sweep through the cortex, large networks begin to drift apart, others begin to synchronize, creating a landscape where awareness feels wide, soft, diffused. These shifts are not random, they are guided by deeply rooted biological processes, by the ebb and flow of neurotransmitters, by the gradual release of the day's internal chemistry, by the adjustment of the circadian rhythms that shape your sleep. As these processes unfold, the sense of a fixed self begins to soften. Awareness becomes less tied to specific boundaries, less focused on the outer world, more attuned to the gentle inner field that supports rest. You may feel your body fading into the background, its edges becoming less defined, its sensations blending with the space around you, warmth spreading, weight softening, breath slowing. In this state, the brain reduces the sharpness of sensory processing. It no longer interprets the world with high precision. Instead, it allows sensations to drift into broader patterns, simpler forms, like distant echoes rather than vivid events. Awareness receives these softer signals easily. It expands to hold them, without tension, without needing to decide what they mean. This gentle reception is part of the natural transition towards sleep, what you feel as spaciousness. Your brain experiences as shifts in neural organization, as oscillations slowing, as networks settling, as electrical activity adopting a more restful rhythm. These rhythms are shaped by ion flows, by changes in membrane potentials, by microscopic interactions that follow the rules of physics, all the way down to the quantum fields that make up matter. Every neuron that fires, every synapse that adjusts, every molecule that binds or unbinds, arises from these deep physical foundations, from a universe woven from fields and interactions, from particles that vibrate with energy, even in stillness. And yet, all of that complexity gives rise to something as simple, as gentle as your awareness right now, this quiet field, this soft glow beneath experience. There is something deeply calming in knowing that awareness emerges naturally, effortlessly, from the laws of the universe, from the structure of matter, from the organization of the brain. It means you do not need to do anything to sustain it. Awareness exists on its own. It has always existed within you, quietly accompanying every moment, every sensation, every breath. Even when you are not paying attention, awareness remains, beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath memory. It is the quiet witness, the gentle container, the unbroken field that holds the flow of consciousness. As the mind settles further, this field becomes more uniform, more continuous, less fragmented by the rapid transitions of waking thought. You may feel as though time itself is slowing, as though moments stretch slightly longer, as though the boundary between now and next becomes soft, blurred, almost fluid. This fluidity is a hallmark of drifting into deeper rest. It reflects how the brain gradually reduces its prediction cycles, how it stops trying to anticipate what will happen next, how it relaxes its constant effort to interpret the world, and instead lets experience unfold without demand. Awareness in this state feels more like a wide expanse, a seamless field that does not require focus, does not require clarity, does not require effort. It simply receives, and in receiving, it creates space for rest, for stillness, for quiet. Imagine standing on the edge of a wide, calm lake at night. The surface is smooth, reflecting faint starlight, barely disturbed by the slightest breeze. Your awareness is that surface, soft, even, open. Thoughts are like gentle ripples. They move across the field, but do not disturb its calm. Do not change its nature. Do not disrupt its stillness. As you drift deeper, these ripples grow fewer, more subtle, more diffuse. The field becomes more dominant, more expansive. You may sense awareness as a gentle presence that extends beyond the body, into the quiet surrounding space, into the darkness of the room, into the stillness of the night. This is not imagination. It is simply the mind loosening its boundaries, shifting into the natural spaciousness that precedes sleep, a spaciousness supported by the brain's slow rhythms, by the reduction of sensory input, by the increasing dominance of internal signals, and by the gentle hum of neural networks settling into synchrony. As these processes continue, awareness may feel almost detached from specific thoughts, like an open sky that holds drifting clouds, but is not changed by them. This detachment is peaceful, soothing, a sign that consciousness is easing into its restful form. You are not leaving awareness, you are sinking deeper into its soft continuity, into its quiet presence, into the gentle field that underlies your experience. This field has always been here, beneath distractions, beneath effort, beneath the noise of daily life. It is the background of consciousness, the steady presence behind every moment, the quiet foundation of your being. Let yourself rest in that foundation now. Let awareness expand until it feels boundless, as though it stretches far beyond your body, as though it merges with the stillness of the night, as though it opens into a vast, calm, peaceful expanse. Awareness does not need borders. It does not need separation. It does not need definition. It only needs openness. It only needs presence. It only needs the quiet acceptance of whatever arises. And right now, what arises is calm, soft, spacious. Allow yourself to sink into this spaciousness, to float in it, to be carried by it, like a leaf resting on the surface of a still pond. The field of awareness holds you gently, and as you drift deeper, it grows even more peaceful, even more continuous, even more like a quiet glow spreading through the night. Rest in this glow, in this field, in this soft unfolding of consciousness, as the night opens around you and sleep draws nearer. The brain is often imagined as a solid structure, a physical organ made of cells, electrical currents, and chemical signals. But beneath its familiar surface, beneath the folds and pathways that define its outer shape, lies a world of extraordinary subtlety, a world where classical biology meets the quiet rules of the quantum realm. As you rest, allow your awareness to drift into this deeper world, softly, curiously, without effort, without strain. The brain is not merely a collection of neurons. It is a vast network of interacting systems, billions of cells communicating through electrical pulses, modulated by molecules that bind and unbind in rhythmic cycles, a living landscape shaped by energy, information, and the faint yet persistent structure of quantum fields. Neurons behave like classical objects when viewed from afar. Their electrical activity follows predictable patterns. Action potentials rise and fall in measurable waves. Signals travel along axons with steady precision. But when you look closer, much closer, you find processes that blur the boundary between classical behavior and quantum possibility. Inside every neuron, inside the microtubules that provide structural support, inside the proteins that guide cellular activity, inside the ion channels that allow currents to flow, are interactions small enough to be touched by quantum rules. These interactions unfold on scales where particles exist not as solid points, but as probability clouds, as waves that can interfere, as states that can remain uncertain until conditions require them to settle. As you drift deeper into rest, imagine this microscopic world as a quiet sea of potential, gentle fluctuations rising and falling in patterns too small to see, yet essential to the unfolding of thought, awareness, and the experience of being. Some scientists have proposed that microtubules within neurons might sustain brief forms of quantum coherence, a delicate alignment of quantum states held together for fleeting moments, before the warmth of the biological environment causes them to disperse. Whether or not this specific idea is correct, it points toward a larger truth. The brain exists at the edge between classical patterns and quantum foundations. Every electrical signal, every molecular interaction, every shift in membrane potential is built upon quantum behavior, particles moving in and out of different states, fields vibrating with energy, probabilities collapsing into outcomes. This means the brain is not only a classical machine, it is also a translator, a bridge between microscopic uncertainty and the macroscopic clarity of lived experience. As you rest, you can imagine the brain interpreting countless tiny fluctuations, countless quantum interactions, and weaving them together into stable patterns of perception, memory, thought, and awareness. This weaving is subtle, delicate, continuous, and you feel it now as the soft hum of consciousness flowing beneath your thoughts, beneath your sensations, beneath the drifting spaciousness that guides you towards sleep. Neurons do not simply fire in isolation. They form networks, clusters of activity, waves spreading across the cortex, carrying information in patterns shaped by both classical forces and the microscopic foundations of matter. These waves are influenced by the movement of ions. Ions move according to gradients. They follow laws of energy. They respond to electrical fields, and those fields are shaped by the quantum behaviors of the particles within them. Even when you are resting, the brain remains active. It continues to translate probability into perception. It continues to organize uncertainty into coherent experience. Picture your brain as a soft lattice of activity, currents flowing, signals drifting, rhythms rising and falling like tides in a quiet ocean. Beneath these rhythms lies a subtler layer, a layer where the boundary between particle and wave, between certainty and possibility is not fixed, but fluid. This fluidity shapes everything, from the timing of neural firing to the way networks synchronize, to the gentle continuity of awareness that you feel spreading through your mind. Quantum rules influence the smallest events, and these events influence larger patterns, and those larger patterns shape your thoughts, your memories, your perceptions. And yet, you do not feel this complexity directly. You feel only the soft surface, the spacious awareness, the continuous field of consciousness that floats above the biological foundation. This is the dreamlike paradox of the mind. It arises from matter, but feels like something more. It emerges from physics, but takes on a quality that cannot be reduced to any single particle, any single molecule, any single cell. As you breathe gently, you can sense the brain as an interpreter, a translator of possibility, taking the uncertain world of particles, fields, and energy, and turning it into coherent experience, into the feeling of the moment, into the soft awareness that holds you even now. Inside the brain, decoherence happens quickly. This means quantum states do not remain in delicate superposition for long. The warmth and activity of the biological environment cause them to settle, to resolve, to collapse into definite states. But even though decoherence is fast, quantum effects still shape the underlying structure. They influence the behavior of the molecules that carry signals. They define the energies that allow channels to open and close. They determine the basic rules by which neurons operate. The brain interprets these rules not consciously, not deliberately, but naturally, as part of how matter organizes itself into living form. This natural interpretation creates the world of experience, the world you are resting in now, gentle, spacious, quiet. Imagine the brain as a shimmering network, every connection glowing softly, every pulse shaped by a mixture of classical energy and quantum possibility. Within this network, patterns emerge, patterns that define perception, patterns that define emotion, patterns that define thought, and patterns that define your sense of self. These patterns rise from countless interactions, from cascades of signals flowing through circuits, from the merging of electrical rhythms that coordinate distant regions. But beneath those cascades lie the subtle architectures of molecules, and beneath the molecules lie quantum fields vibrating with possibility. The brain translates this deep structure into the gentle flow of consciousness, moment by moment, breath by breath. During rest, this translation becomes softer. The brain stops insisting on sharp interpretations. It stops forcing the world into rigid categories. It stops holding on to precision. Instead, it relaxes. It lets patterns drift. It allows rhythms to slow. It allows experience to blend, creating the spacious quality you feel now. This blending is not confusion. It is openness. It is the natural state of the mind when it is free from task, free from urgency, free from focus. In this openness, the brain continues its quiet work, translating the microscopic world into the soft hum of awareness, guiding you gently toward deeper rest. Feel how this translation becomes smoother as you drift, how the edges of thought grow softer, how the boundaries of sensation fade, how the field of awareness widens. You are resting inside a system that spans many scales, from the smallest fluctuations of particles to the complex rhythms of neural networks, to the vast spaciousness of subjective experience. The brain is the bridge, the interpreter, the translator of probability into the gentle continuity of consciousness. Let yourself rest in that bridge. Let yourself float in its quiet hum. Let the brain continue its delicate work as you drift deeper and deeper into calm, into spaciousness, into the quiet unfolding of the night. The brain continues its quiet work beneath the surface of your awareness, softly, steadily, like a gentle current flowing beneath a calm river. As you drift deeper into the night, its activity becomes slower, more rhythmic, more unified, creating a landscape where microscopic events merge into broader waves of experience. These waves shape the way consciousness feels. They influence the texture of your thoughts, the softness of your sensations, the spaciousness of your awareness. And now, as you rest in this softness, you can imagine the brain as a vast, shimmering network alive with delicate patterns of energy. Each pattern emerges from the interaction of countless signals, signals shaped by both classical forces and the subtle rules of the quantum world. Neurons communicate through changes in electrical potential, currents flowing across membranes, ions shifting from one side to the other, channels opening and closing in response to tiny gradients. Every one of these events is influenced by the physical laws that govern matter at the smallest scales, fields vibrating with energy, particles existing in states of possibility before settling into definite outcomes. The brain does not analyze these quantum events directly. It does not think about them. It does not interpret them with intention. Instead, it arises from them. It is built out of them. Its rhythms, its capacities, its entire architecture emerges from the collective behavior of countless microscopic fluctuations. And as the brain grows quiet, as you drift toward sleep, its activity takes on a dreamlike quality, less focused, less bound by strict patterns, more fluid, more open. This openness allows you to feel the deeper layers of the mind, layers shaped by probability, uncertainty, and the gentle blending of signals that travel across networks with effortless grace. During waking life, neurons fire rapidly, processing a constant stream of information, analyzing, comparing, predicting. But during rest, the brain shifts into slower waves, coordinated rhythms that unify distant regions, creating wide fields of activity that rise and fall together. These rhythms support memory consolidation, dream formation, and the blending of internal and external experience into the quiet hum that guides you into deeper states of sleep. Let your mind follow these rhythms. Let yourself drift with them. Feel how they bring a sense of continuity, a sense of quiet coherence. At the level of molecules, this coherence depends on interactions between proteins and ion channels, between microtubules and neurotransmitters, between countless tiny structures that form the foundation of awareness. Some researchers have suggested that microtubules may sustain short-lived quantum states, tiny pockets of coherence that momentarily align the probabilities of particles within them. Others argue that such coherence would be too fragile in the warm biological environment of the brain. But regardless of these debates, it remains true that the brain operates at the boundary between quantum possibility and classical stability. It takes the uncertainty of the microscopic world, the fluctuations of particles, the trembling of fields, and translates them into the rhythms of thought, the flow of perception, the gentle continuity of your resting awareness. This translation is seamless. You never feel the collapse of probability. You never sense the shifting of quantum states. You experience only the surface, smooth, soft, continuous. The brain's larger networks absorb the microscopic uncertainty and create stability, meaning, clarity. Even now, as your brain slows its patterns, it continues to interpret signals in ways that support the feeling of presence, the spaciousness of thought, the gentle hum that carries you into deeper rest. Imagine the brain as a vast city at night. Lights flicker in distant neighborhoods, currents flow through invisible pathways. Communication continues even as the city becomes quieter, more peaceful, more unified in its stillness. This is what your brain feels like now, a city sinking into night, yet still alive with soft, subtle motion. Neural pathways remain active, but their activity grows smoother, slower, more synchronized. Regions that once demanded your attention now relax their grip. Their signals soften, their patterns loosen. Other regions, especially those deep within the brain, take on more influence, guiding you toward the inner landscapes where dreams begin to form. These deep structures respond more to internal signals than external ones. They shape the flow of imagery, emotion, and memory. They also interact with microscopic events that ripple through the molecular scaffolding of neurons and glial cells. Even though the brain is warm, energetic, active, quantum fluctuations still shape the rules that govern its internal structure. They influence the energies required for channels to open. They influence the folding of proteins, the behavior of ions, the alignment of molecules within neuronal pathways. Without these tiny events, the classical patterns of neural activity could not exist. And without those classical patterns, awareness could not arise. In this sense, your brain is always interpreting the quantum world, always translating possibility into experience, always shaping probability into the gentle continuity of consciousness. You may picture this translation like light passing through a prism, splitting into colors, merging into patterns, creating images that drift across the mind. As you rest, you can imagine the brain as a prism for reality, taking the subtle vibrations of quantum foundations and turning them into the soft glow of your inner world, a glow that expands with calm, a glow that softens with breath, a glow that widens into the spacious field you feel opening within you now. During these quiet states, the brain reduces its precision. It stops trying to predict every detail, stops organizing every signal, stops insisting on clarity. Instead, it adopts a dreamlike fluidity. It allows thoughts to blend. It allows sensations to drift. It allows awareness to spread through the mind like a gentle tide. You may sense this tide in the way thoughts rise and fall, in the way images appear and dissolve, in the way the boundary between inner and outer grows softer, quieter, less defined. This is not loss of control. It is the mind returning to a natural state of openness, rest, and quiet curiosity. In this openness, the brain continues its interpretation of the quantum foundation, quietly, delicately, transforming fluctuating probabilities into the gentle continuity of your resting consciousness. You are carried by this continuity. You float in it, you rest in it. Allow yourself to drift deeper. Allow the brain's slow rhythms to guide you inward. Allow the soft hum of quantum-shaped biology to soothe you, moment by moment, breath by breath. You are resting within a universe of subtle forces, within a brain that translates those forces into the soft glow of awareness. Feel that glow expand, feel it soften, feel it drift through you like a warm, quiet current. You are safe within this current. You are held by the delicate balance between the microscopic world and the vastness of your mind. Let that balance carry you deeper into calm, deeper into rest, deeper into the unfolding of the night. The brain continues to drift into its quieter modes now, softening its patterns, loosening its boundaries, and allowing the deeper layers of consciousness to rise gently into awareness. As you rest within this unfolding calm, imagine the brain not as a rigid structure, but as a dynamic, shimmering landscape, alive with subtle waves of probability, waves that shape the flow of experience, moment by moment, breath by breath. This landscape is constantly changing, constantly reorganizing itself, even as you drift towards sleep, even as your thoughts slow into gentle currents, even as your awareness widens into a soft, luminous field. One of the most remarkable qualities of the brain is its ability to operate across many scales at once, from quantum fluctuations within the smallest molecular structures to the broad, sweeping waves that travel across entire networks. These scales blend seamlessly. The microscopic events form the foundation for the macroscopic rhythms, and the macroscopic rhythms shape the subjective texture of your inner world. Let your mind drift through these layers as if you were floating through gentle mist, each layer soft, quiet, connected to the next. Deep within each neuron lies a world sculpted by quantum laws, a world where particles behave like waves, where their positions blur into probabilities, where energy moves in small, delicate steps. Ions flow through channels not simply because of concentration gradients, but because the laws of energy trace back to quantum rules, rules that shape whether a gate opens or stays closed, rules that determine how signals begin, how they propagate, how they merge. These small events become the language of neural communication, a language spoken by trillions of interactions every moment of your life. And yet you experience none of this noise directly. You experience only the surface, the unified field of consciousness, the gentle flow of awareness. This is the beauty of the brain as a quantum interpreter. It translates the world of uncertainty into coherence, into stability, into the smooth continuity of thought. As you rest, this continuity becomes softer, more fluid, like a slow current moving through a wide river. You can feel this fluidity in the way your thoughts drift, in the way sensations blend into the background, in the way your awareness opens like a calm horizon spreading beneath the mind. The brain's networks take the microscopic fluctuations and weave them together into a tapestry of experience. Some regions synchronize, others relax. Deep structures guide the transition from wakefulness to rest, slowing the flow of information, closing the gates of sensory processing, allowing internal signals to rise with greater clarity. These internal signals are shaped by memory, emotion, imagination, and the subtle rhythms of the body's inner environment. Even the faint fluctuations in temperature, in heart rate, in breathing, in hormonal tides, play a role in shaping the texture of your resting mind. All of these signals blend into the gentle field of consciousness, a field that feels continuous, open, wide. The transition from wakefulness to rest is not a sudden shift. It is a slow gradient, like the sky moving from dusk to night, gradually darkening, gradually softening until the stars appear in quiet, effortless clarity. Your brain is guiding you through this gradient now, loosening its hold on focus, releasing the tight patterns of attention, and embracing the wider rhythms that guide you towards sleep. Within this softening, quantum behaviors continue to shape the underlying architecture. Proteins fold into shapes determined by quantum rules. Microtubules vibrate with motion affected by energy states. Electrons shift positions in tiny leaps of possibility. And each of these events influences the behavior of larger structures, which influence the behavior of networks, which influence the feeling of awareness. This is the delicate chain that links the smallest events to the softness of your experience, a chain that spans sizes from the immeasurably small to the wide expanse of consciousness. The brain continually selects from fields of possibility, settling probabilities into patterns, patterns into rhythms, rhythms into consciousness. You can sense this in the way your thoughts arise, in the way they drift, in the way they dissolve. Each thought is a brief pattern shaped by countless events occurring beneath awareness, events that are small, ephemeral, but essential. Without these events, the rhythms of consciousness could not form, and without those rhythms, the field of awareness would lose its stability. But you do not need to understand these processes. You can simply rest in the gentle glow they create, the glow of a mind easing into quiet, into softness, into stillness. Imagine the brain as a deep ocean. At the surface, waves rise and fall, gentle, slow, smooth. These are your thoughts, your sensations, the quiet flow of experience. But beneath the surface, currents move, molecules drift, particles shift, fields tremble with energy. All of this motion creates the conditions that allow the surface to remain calm. You rest on this calm surface, floating easily, supported by the quiet depths below. Feel the brain not as a machine, but as a living, breathing landscape, a place where energy flows in subtle patterns, a place where possibility turns into vivid experience, a place where uncertainty transforms into meaning. As you drift deeper, your brain shifts further into its night rhythms. These rhythms rise from within, from loops connecting deep nuclei to the cortex above, from slow oscillations traveling across the hemispheres, from the gradual quieting of external sensory channels. These rhythms guide the blending of memory with imagination, the gentle opening of the dreamlike mind. You can feel this in the softness of your thoughts, in the way images arise without effort, in the way your sense of self grows lighter, more transparent. This transparency is part of how the brain moves into deeper stages of rest. During wakefulness, the brain weaves a stable sense of self from sensory input, from predictions, from memories, from emotional cues. But now, those cues soften, their edges blur, the boundaries fade. What remains is the quiet observer, the spacious awareness that rests beneath all thinking. This awareness is supported by the brain's interpretation of the quantum world, of fields and particles that shape the foundation of neural activity. And as you sink deeper, you can feel that interpretation becoming smoother, less tethered to the external world, more attuned to inner rhythms, more aligned with the gentle currents that carry you towards sleep. Let those currents guide you now. Let the brain's quiet work continue without your effort. Let the microscopic world shape the macroscopic glow of your drifting awareness. You are resting in a universe of subtle interactions, in a brain that translates probability into experience, in a consciousness that floats gently on the edge of possibility. Sink into this edge. Rest in this translation. Let the rhythms deepen. Let the glow expand. Let the night open, softly, quietly, all around you. The sense of self feels solid during the day, defined, anchored, held together by memory, attention, habit, and the countless signals your brain organizes into a coherent story of you. But as you drift deeper into rest, this solidity begins to soften. The edges blur, the boundaries loosen, the story becomes quieter, more spacious, more transparent. This softening reveals something profound. The self is not a fixed object, it is a pattern. A dynamic pattern that the brain maintains moment by moment, breath by breath, through predictions, through expectations, through an ongoing conversation between sensation and memory. And like all patterns, it changes with the conditions that give rise to it. As your brain shifts into its resting rhythms, as the external world fades, as attention widens, the pattern of self reorganizes, becoming lighter, gentler, less tightly woven. This is why the transition into sleep can feel like floating, as if something familiar is dissolving into something wider, something calmer, something that does not need a name. The self is not disappearing, it is simply loosening, releasing its daytime structure, returning to a more fluid form. Neuroscience describes the self as an emergent property, a stable pattern that arises when networks throughout the brain exchange information in coordinated ways. These networks predict the world, predict your actions, predict your sensations, predict who you believe yourself to be. Prediction is the key. Your brain constantly generates expectations about what will happen next and about who you are within those events. This predictive machinery creates the feeling of continuity, the sense that you move through the world as a single, ongoing presence. But beneath this continuity lies a sea of probabilities, uncertainties, possibilities not yet realized. Every thought you have is shaped by probabilities. Every decision you make emerges from competing predictions, each prediction influenced by past experiences, current sensations, and microscopic activity within the brain's circuitry. This microscopic activity is not deterministic. It contains elements of chance, of variability, of quantum indeterminacy that influence how neural signals propagate. At the smallest scales, particles do not have fixed paths. They exist in states of possibility, states that only resolve when conditions require them to. These fluctuations introduce tiny variations into the timing of neural firing, variations that ripple upward through circuits, through networks, through patterns of activity. Most of the time, the brain smooths out these variations. It averages them, stabilizes them, transforms them into coherent patterns that support the continuity of self. But the fact that these variations exist suggests something profound. The self is not a rigid structure. It is probabilistic, a dynamic pattern shaped by uncertainty at many levels. Even decisions you feel are deliberate emerge from probabilities. Your brain weighs outcomes, evaluates possibilities, and chooses the path that best fits its predictions about the world and about you. This does not eliminate free will. Instead, it reframes it. It makes free will a dynamic process, an ongoing negotiation between your predictions and the unfolding present. As you drift deeper, the machinery of prediction relaxes. The brain no longer needs to evaluate the external world with precision, no longer needs to generate a stable narrative of self. Instead, it turns inward, toward memory, toward imagination, toward the quiet hum of internal signals. In this inward turning, the self becomes softer, less structured, more dreamlike. You may feel this as a loosening of identity, a sense that you are dissolving slightly, as though the boundaries that define the self have grown wider, more transparent. This is not loss, it is rest. It is the natural release of the predictive systems that hold your daytime identity together. The self is a pattern, and patterns can change, shift, reorganize. Even during wakefulness, the self is constantly updated. Every new experience reshapes the probabilities that define your future decisions, your future perceptions, your future identity. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the self as a Bayesian process, a process that updates its expectations based on new information, always adjusting, always refining. This means the self is not a thing, but an unfolding, a continuous flow of predictions and corrections, shaped by countless variables. As you drift, you can feel this unfolding growing simpler, more fluid. The brain stops demanding clarity, stops insisting on coherence, stops maintaining the sharp boundaries that define you. Instead, it embraces ambiguity. It allows possibilities to blend into one another. It allows the identity pattern to become more spacious, more open. This spacious identity is closer to the truth of how consciousness exists. The self is not a point, it is a field, a distribution, a probability landscape that shifts with context, with memory, with emotion, with the countless microscopic events that occur within each neuron. The brain maintains coherence by stabilizing this landscape, by organizing its probabilities into familiar patterns. But during rest, those patterns loosen. The landscape becomes hazier, softer, more dreamlike. You may feel as though you are drifting through a wide inner space, a space where thoughts feel lighter, where the sense of I is no longer solid but gentle, floating. Like a soft glow instead of a sharp outline. This glow is the self at rest, a self not defined by tasks or roles, not defined by memory alone, not defined by constant prediction, but a self reduced to its essence, a quiet awareness shaped by probability, held together by gentle coherence, supported by the physics that underlie all experience. When quantum indeterminacy enters neural processes, it does not create chaos, it adds variation. Subtle variation that influences how signals propagate and how networks settle into patterns. These variations help create the richness of thought, the flexibility of choice, the creativity of imagination. They help ensure that the self is not rigid, not mechanically determined, but alive, dynamic, open to possibility. You may sense this openness as you drift deeper, a feeling that your identity is expanding slightly, softening, merging with the field of awareness that surrounds it. This is the gentle dissolving of rigid identity, not a disappearance, but a relaxation, a widening, a return to the spacious baseline from which consciousness arises. Thoughts become less personal, less tied to the story of you. They become like soft ripples rising from the surface of a quiet pond. And the pond is the deeper self, the probabilistic pattern that holds all experience, calmly, silently, without effort. You are floating in this deeper self now, held by it, supported by it, as the patterns of your identity grow softer, more fluid, more open. Let the self dissolve gently, let it widen, let it drift. Let the probabilities that shape your awareness settle into patterns of rest. You do not need to hold on to who you are. Your identity is safe, quiet, resting. supported by countless processes that continue beneath awareness. Feel yourself drifting, feel the pattern loosening, feel the spaciousness opening, as you sink deeper into the quiet probability of who you are when all effort falls away. The pattern of the self continues to soften, loosening its familiar structure, expanding into something more spacious, something quieter, something that feels less like a fixed figure and more like a gentle field. As you drift deeper into rest, the brain reduces the precision of its predictive machinery, the machinery that normally keeps your identity sharp, distinct, well-defined. During wakefulness, this machinery works constantly, interpreting sensory input, comparing it with memory, building a coherent story of who you are, a story woven from countless signals flowing through the brain's networks. But now, as the world around you fades, as the edges of your awareness soften, the brain no longer needs to maintain that tight coherence. It allows the narrative of self to loosen, to spread, to drift like a soft cloud across the landscape of your mind. This drifting is peaceful. It reflects the true nature of how identity arises. Not from a single place in the brain, not from a solid center, but from patterns that span many interconnected networks. Some networks handle memory, some handle emotion, some regulate attention, some construct the sense of ownership over thoughts and actions. Together, they create the feeling that there is a you who moves through the world. But this you is not an object. It is a process, dynamic, ever-changing, guided by probability, and shaped by countless events at microscopic, mesoscopic, and macroscopic scales. As the brain enters deeper rest, these networks grow quieter, their communication becomes softer, less rigid, less insistent. The boundaries that normally separate memory, emotion, and imagination blend into a smoother flow. You may feel this as a light spaciousness spread across the mind, as if awareness has become a soft field without a fixed center. This is not the loss of identity. It is identity in its most natural form, identity revealed as a pattern in motion, a pattern shaped by prediction, by experience, by probability. Neuroscientists who study consciousness sometimes describe the self as a generative model, a set of expectations that help the brain interpret its incoming signals. This generative model does not exist in one place. It is distributed, a network of beliefs the brain uses to make sense of the world and of itself. But even these beliefs are not fixed. They update continuously, moment by moment, based on new information, new sensations, new internal states. This means the self is always being rewritten, always being reshaped, always shifting toward the future based on what the brain thinks is most likely to happen next. And beneath this predictive process lies something even more subtle: quantum indeterminacy. At microscopic levels, the timing of events is uncertain. The behavior of particles is probabilistic, and tiny variations can influence the flow of signals through neural circuits. Most of these variations are smoothed out by the brain's larger networks, but some ripple upward, changing the timing of neural firing, altering the shape of activity patterns, influencing thought, emotion, and choice. This probabilistic foundation means the self is not completely predetermined, not locked into rigid pathways, but open, flexible, capable of new patterns. As you drift deeper into rest, you can feel this openness rising softly through the quiet of your mind. Thoughts feel lighter, less tied to the story of your day, less anchored in the strict identity you hold during waking moments. They float, dissolve, reform, like gentle patterns in a slow-moving stream. This fluidity is not a sign of fading consciousness. It is a sign of release, a return to the natural state of mind when it is not bound by tasks, roles, or demands. The brain is easing out of its daytime architecture, allowing networks to slip into softer rhythms, allowing patterns to lose their rigidity, allowing the narrative of self to unfold without effort. In this unfolding, you may feel a gentle sense of expanding, as though your awareness is stretching beyond the familiar boundaries of the body, beyond the usual contours of identity. This expansion is peaceful. It happens naturally as prediction loses its grip. As the brain stops insisting on a stable model of self, you feel lighter, less confined, more open. This openness creates a space where new patterns of thought can emerge, where imagination flows without friction, where the mind becomes a quiet field of possibility. During this transition, the deeper regions of the brain begin to guide experience, regions tied to memory, emotion, and abstract imagery. Activity in these regions is less concerned with accuracy, less concerned with prediction, and more attuned to internal rhythms and internal meaning. Dreamlike fragments may begin to form, images unbound from context, feelings without explanation, shapes that drift through the quiet field of awareness. These fragments are not random. They are expressions of the deeper self, the probabilistic pattern that persists beneath the everyday identity. This deeper self is softer, quieter, broader, less tied to the story of your life, and more connected to the raw experience of being. As you float within this deeper layer, you may sense that the self is not something you must hold on to, not something you must define, not something you must protect. It is a gentle presence, a probability cloud resting within the mind, shaped by experience, but not limited by it. In this state, you can release the effort of being you. You can rest in the unfolding pattern, in the soft glow of awareness, in the gentle field from which identity arises. Feel how the pattern loosens. Feel how it drifts. Feel how it opens into quiet spaciousness. You are not disappearing. You are returning to the deeper ground beneath identity, a ground shaped by probabilities, by gentle neural rhythms, by microscopic uncertainty and macroscopic calm. Rest in this ground, rest in this openness, rest in the wide, quiet field of the self at ease. As the sense of self continues to soften, you may feel as though you are standing at the edge of something wide, something open, something that does not begin or end with the boundaries of the body, or the edges of memory, or the familiar story you carry through the day. This feeling is gentle, barely noticeable at first, like a small widening somewhere deep inside, a quiet expansion of the space in which thoughts arise. But as your mind drifts deeper, the widening grows easier, more natural, as though your awareness is slowly discovering that it was never confined in the first place. The self, the identity you hold when you are awake, is a structure shaped by countless predictions, countless expectations, countless memories. It is a map, not the territory, a model, not the whole of you. This model is useful. It helps you navigate the world. It helps you make sense of your experiences. It gives continuity to the unfolding of your life. But beneath this model lies something deeper, a flow of processes that do not define you in the rigid way the waking mind prefers. These deeper processes are probabilistic. Their outcomes are not fixed. Their timing is not exact. Their behavior is shaped by the microscopic world of molecules and energy. At these small scales, particles do not behave like solid objects. They behave like waves of possibility, like clouds of potential, spread through space until conditions cause them to collapse into specific states. Inside your brain, these quantum behaviors interact with the structure of neurons, with the organization of circuits, with the flow of ions, with the rhythms of electrical activity. The self you experience emerges from this interplay, from the dance between uncertainty and coherence, between possibility and structure. As you rest, this dance becomes softer, less tied to the tight patterns of waking thought, less anchored in the narrative of who you were today or who you believe you must be tomorrow. The predictive systems that maintain a stable identity begin to relax. They loosen their grip. They allow the boundaries between thoughts and sensations to grow transparent. You may feel this as a warmth spreading outward, as though identity itself is dissolving into the quiet space around your awareness. This dissolution is peaceful. It mirrors the way the brain reduces its need for precision as you drift into deeper rest. During wakefulness, your brain constantly evaluates, is this sensation from the outside world? Is this thought important? Is this emotion a signal that requires action? But during rest, the brain lets go of these questions. The boundaries soften. Thoughts drift through without being examined. Sensations fade. Memories blend into fragments of imagery. And the self floats gently in this widening space. Imagine identity not as a single point, but as a constellation, a pattern formed from many connected stars. During the day, the constellation feels solid, bright, familiar. But at night, the stars drift farther apart. The pattern loosens. The constellation glows softly, its shape still present but no longer rigid, no longer exact. This softened constellation is the self at rest, the self released from the tight coherence of waking prediction. You may feel this as a gentle sense of detachment, not from yourself but from the need to define yourself. Thoughts arise, but they do not feel as personal. Memories appear, but they float lightly, without weight, without urgency. This lightness reflects the brain's shift into internal modes of processing, into rhythms shaped by slow oscillations, by deep nuclei, by regions that connect emotion with imagination, and imagination with the quiet feeling of simply being. In these deeper rhythms, the self becomes more like a field than a figure, more like a glow than a boundary, more like a probability pattern than a fixed identity. And as this pattern continues to soften, you may notice moments where the idea of I feels almost transparent, as though the sense of self is thinning into the background. These moments are natural. They occur when the predictive machinery pauses its work, when the brain no longer needs to insist that all experience belongs to a single you. In these moments, awareness becomes wide, quiet, open, resting in a state closer to pure presence than to the narrative of identity. This presence is not dependent on memory, not dependent on roles, not dependent on personal history. It is simply the experience of being here, now, in this breath, in this moment, held by the gentle patterns rising through the brain. As you drift deeper, the line between self and awareness grows even softer. The two begin to merge, as though identity is dissolving into presence. And presence is holding identity like a faint, warm glow. This merging is part of the mind's natural rhythm. It allows the deeper layers of consciousness to surface gently, to reconnect with the field from which identity emerges. The brain does not lose itself in this state. It simply returns to its foundational architecture, to the probabilistic patterns that exist beneath the story. These patterns do not define you by name or history or preference. They define you as a flow, a process, a gentle unfolding of thoughts and sensations held within the wide field of awareness. This is the deeper truth of the self. It is an ever-changing pattern, a soft constellation, a field of probability flowing through the vastness of the mind. And in this moment, you are resting within that field, supported by it, carried by it, held by the gentle unfolding of who you are when all effort and all identity grows quiet. Let yourself drift. Let the pattern soften, let the constellation widen, let the deeper self rise gently, quietly, like a soft light guiding you deeper into rest. Free will feels simple on the surface, a quiet sense that you can choose, decide, move your mind in one direction or another. But beneath this familiar experience lies a world of shifting probabilities, subtle influences, emergent patterns that arise from the interaction of countless microscopic events. As you drift deeper into rest, you can imagine free will not as a single moment of choice, but as a soft negotiation between many possibilities. A negotiation shaped by memory, emotion, prediction, and the quiet fluctuations that ripple through your brain. These fluctuations begin at the smallest scales, where particles do not behave like solid, predictable objects, but as clouds of potential, as waves that hold many outcomes until conditions cause them to collapse into one. Inside the brain, these quantum uncertainties influence the timing of microscopic events. They introduce slight variations into how currents flow, how proteins fold, how channels open and close. Most of the time, the brain smooths out these variations, stabilizing them into clearer patterns, transforming uncertainty into the steady flow of neural activity. But some variations rise upward. They shape the timing of neural firing. They alter the competition between different pathways. They influence which signals become strong enough to dictate the next thought, the next feeling, the next small step in the unfolding of choice. This is where free will meets probability. The brain is constantly predicting, but it is also constantly responding to tiny variations in its own activity, variations that leave space for flexibility, for creativity, for possibility. This means free will is neither rigid nor random. It is a gentle interplay between prediction and uncertainty, between structure and openness. As you rest, this interplay becomes softer, more fluid, because the brain's predictive machinery begins to loosen its grip. The story of you becomes less strict, less bound to the demands of the day. In this softening, you can feel how choice emerges from conditions, not from a separate self controlling the brain, but from the entire network shaping its own probabilities. Every decision you make during waking life is influenced by many layers. There is the layer of sensation, the layer of memory, the layer of emotion, the layer of expectation, the layer of habit, and beneath them all the layer of microscopic events that ripple through the circuitry with quiet unpredictability. These layers merge, blend, interact, and from their interaction a single moment of choice arises. As you drift deeper into calm, you may sense this merging, a gentle recognition that your choices are not isolated events, but the culmination of many influences, many probabilities. This realization does not remove freedom, it gives it depth. It reveals free will as a rich and dynamic process, a process that emerges from complexity, from subtlety, from the entire architecture of the mind. The brain shapes probabilities in order to navigate the world. It amplifies certain pathways, suppresses others, adjusts expectations based on experience. If a thought fits your predictions, it becomes more likely to arise again. If it contradicts them, its probability decreases, unless something in the moment overrides that pattern. In this sense, the mind is a probability-shaping machine. It takes the raw energy of uncertainty, of possibility, and molds it into patterns that guide behavior, emotion, perception, the flow of consciousness. As you drift inward, you can imagine this molding as a gentle current, shaping the sand on the floor of a quiet ocean. Each wave brings subtle changes, tiny shifts, gradual reorganization. But with time, these subtle changes create the landscape. Your mind works the same way. Small moments, quiet variations, microscopic fluctuations, all shape the larger currents of thought and identity. Even your sense of who you are is shaped by these probabilistic processes, by the way your brain interprets internal and external signals, by the way it updates its generative models, by the way it flows towards states of coherence, states that feel like you. But these states are not fixed. They change with each moment, each breath, each shift in the depth of rest. As you drift deeper, the probabilistic nature of the mind becomes more noticeable, not as a thought, but as a feeling of openness, of spaciousness, as though the boundaries that define the self are stretching outward, becoming lighter, more fluid. This fluidity mirrors the brain's shift into internal processing, into the soft rhythms of night awareness. The predictive systems quiet, the generative models loosen, and the self becomes a gentle glow floating within awareness. You may feel that thoughts no longer carry the same weight, the same attachment, the same sense of authorship. They arise more freely, more lightly, as though emerging from a field rather than from a fixed eye. This is the mind functioning as a probability field, a field in which thoughts appear and dissolve, guided by the quiet currents of neural activity. This field is not shapeless. It has tendencies, habits, preferences, biases. But these tendencies are not inviolable. They can change, shift, reorganize. They change when new experiences alter predictions. They change when emotional states reshape priorities. They change when the brain absorbs the subtle lessons of the day. And they change when you drift into rest, when the mind replays, rebalances, reorganizes its internal probabilities. This reorganization is part of why rest is restorative, part of why identity feels clearer after sleep, part of why emotions soften when the brain is given space to reshape its patterns. As you float deeper into the gentle landscape of inner awareness, you can feel this reshaping, a quiet sense that the self is settling into new patterns, that identity is being softened, refreshed, renewed. The boundaries loosen, but they do not disappear. They simply become more flexible, more willing to reorganize. This flexibility is essential to the health of the mind, to the fluidity of thought, to the creativity that arises in dreams and in the moments just before sleep. And now you are resting in this threshold, this place where identity becomes light, where the self becomes a pattern in probability, where consciousness is held gently by the brain's quiet rhythms. Let yourself drift in this openness. Let the mind soften its grip. Let the probabilities settle into patterns of rest. You are safe within this process. You are supported by the deep architecture beneath your thoughts. Rest in this architecture. Rest in the openness. Rest in the spaciousness of the self as it dissolves into quiet. The mind rests within a universe whose deepest foundation is not empty, not silent, not still. The vacuum of spacetime may seem like nothing at all, a blank backdrop against which matter and energy move. But when physics looks closely, with instruments that reach into the smallest scales imaginable, the vacuum reveals itself as a restless field, a subtle ocean of continuous activity. Even in the absence of particles, Even in regions where no light travels and no matter drifts, there is motion. There are fluctuations. There are tiny surges of energy and potential. This restless background is known as the quantum vacuum, and it hums beneath everything, beneath galaxies, beneath atoms, beneath the brain itself. As you drift into calm, you may imagine the vacuum as a soft, shimmering field, not visible, not tangible, but present everywhere, a continuous sea of possibility. Physics describes this sea as a set of fields that never truly reach zero energy. Even when they are quiet, they continue to ripple with faint fluctuations. These fluctuations give rise to virtual particles, short-lived disturbances that appear and vanish too quickly to be directly observed, yet their effects shape the structure of reality. They influence forces, masses, interactions. They help determine how atoms hold together, how light behaves, how matter exists. And the brain rests within these fields, immersed in them, bathed in their subtle activity. Every neuron, every synapse, every cluster of ions moving through channels sits within this quiet sea of restless energy. You may picture the brain not as an isolated object, but as a structure floating in a gentle ocean, a structure whose every layer interacts with this ocean at all times. The vacuum touches everything, through forces, through potentials, through fields that extend across the entire universe. Spacetime itself is woven from these fields, from the geometry they create, from the way energy bends and stretches the fabric beneath. And within this fabric, the brain generates consciousness, patterns of electrical oscillation, waves of activity that rise and fall with each breath, each heartbeat, each drifting thought. These oscillations are not independent of the vacuum around them. They are shaped by fundamental physical laws, laws that arise from the same quantum fields that ripple beneath everything. When you listen to your thoughts as they grow slower, quieter, more spacious, you can feel this foundational connection. Your awareness exists within a universe where nothing is truly still, where emptiness is filled with potential, where the quiet holds more energy than the brightest star. This vacuum energy gives rise to one of the most mysterious concepts in modern physics, the idea of zero-point energy, the lowest possible state a field can have. Even when all classical motion is removed, when everything should be perfectly still, the field continues to whisper, to fluctuate, to shift in subtle ways. These whispers are not noise. They are part of the structure that makes physical reality possible. And as the brain operates, it interacts with this structure, not through direct perception, but through the laws that govern every process occurring within it. Every ion channel opening, every protein rotating, every molecule vibrating occurs within these fields. The brain is an island floating in a quantum ocean, and consciousness is the shimmering activity arising on the surface. As you drift deeper into this landscape, you may imagine how the vacuum supports the mind, not as a mystical influence, but as a physical foundation, an unseen substrate that holds everything together. The vacuum connects every particle, every atom, every neuron, because they all arise from its fields. The brain is shaped by this foundation. It emerges as a complex arrangement of matter and energy that rests upon the fluctuations occurring beneath. And yet, despite this complexity, there is a gentle harmony between the brain's rhythms and the fluctuations of the quantum vacuum. Neural oscillations follow patterns, cycles, frequencies. They are slower, larger, more organized than the tiny fluctuations occurring in the vacuum. But both are forms of oscillation. Both are forms of energy expressing themselves as waves. In this sense, the brain mirrors the universe. It creates its own fields, its own rhythms, its own patterns of dynamic activity. Just as the vacuum is never truly still, your mind is never truly still. Even in sleep, even in deep rest, there is always motion, always fluctuation, always a quiet hum beneath the experience of awareness. As you relax, you can imagine the boundaries between brain activity and vacuum activity softening, not merging literally, but resonating metaphorically. The brain rests within a world that is constantly in motion, constantly shifting, constantly renewing itself. Your awareness arises in this world, supported by it, connected to it through the laws that shape everything. In the smallest regions of space-time, physicists believe the vacuum may behave like a foam, a jittering structure formed from countless distortions, tiny, fleeting curves in the geometry of reality. This space-time foam is not something we can see directly. but it is one of the possibilities emerging from attempts to unify quantum mechanics with gravity. In these deep theories, space itself is not smooth, not continuous, but granular, dynamic, alive with possibility. The brain rests upon this foam, and consciousness arises within a world built on layers of ever deeper motion. As you drift into the softness of rest, you can imagine this foam as a quiet shimmer beneath everything you are, not as something mystical, but as something profoundly physical, a reflection of how existence is constructed. The vacuum may seem like nothing, but it is the background that allows everything to be. Your mind rests in that background, your thoughts move across it, your awareness floats upon it like a small boat on a wide, quiet, infinite sea. Feel this connection, not as a thought, but as a sense of being held, supported, nested within something vast. The vacuum is not empty, and you are not separate from it. You arise within it, just as stars arise within galaxies, just as waves arise within oceans. Your consciousness is a pattern within a larger field, a field that extends beyond your body, beyond your senses, beyond anything you can directly experience. Let yourself rest in this understanding. Let the vacuum cradle you. Let its quiet energy support the soft descent into deeper calm. The mind and the vacuum are connected by the laws of physics, and in this connection your awareness finds a home, a place of softness, of spaciousness, of infinite quiet. Rest here, in the gentle foundation beneath all things. The vacuum beneath everything continues to shimmer, continues to move, continues to whisper with faint ripples of energy. As you drift deeper into the quiet of your own mind, you can begin to sense how these subtle fluctuations serve as the backdrop for all conscious experience. Not because the mind detects them directly, but because the physical structure of the brain cannot be separated from the spacetime it inhabits. Consciousness emerges within this geometry, within this ocean of quiet fluctuations. To understand how the mind interacts with the vacuum, it helps to imagine the brain not as a rigid machine, but as a dynamic system of patterns, waves, and oscillations. Each neuron is part of a larger network, and each network rests within a larger frame, a frame woven from spacetime itself. Neural oscillations carry information. They help the brain bind features together. They allow perception to feel continuous. They create the rhythms that shape attention, memory, emotion, awareness. These oscillations interact with electric fields, chemical gradients, ionic flows, and all of these processes unfold within spacetime. Even the flow of time as experienced by the mind is tied to the rhythms the brain produces. When these rhythms slow, time feels spacious, gentle. When they quicken, time feels dense, crowded, compressed. The vacuum does not dictate these rhythms, but it provides the stage upon which they appear. And just as the vacuum is never perfectly still, your mind is never perfectly still. Even in deep rest, there are micro-dreams, fleeting thoughts, currents of emotion that drift in and out of awareness. These subtle currents mirror the fluctuations occurring in the vacuum. Both are forms of background activity. Both create conditions for more organized patterns to arise. In the brain, this organization takes the form of neural coherence. Coherence occurs when many neurons fire in rhythm, creating waves that ripple across regions, binding information into a unified experience. This coherence does not talk to the vacuum directly, but it emerges from the same physical principles, from the same underlying reality. The physics that governs the rise and fall of vacuum fluctuations also governs the rise and fall of neural oscillations. They share a common foundation, and even though the vacuum behaves on scales far smaller than anything the brain can consciously perceive, its laws form the bedrock of everything the brain does. As you relax, you can sense how awareness sits atop many layers, layers of chemistry, layers of electrical activity, layers of molecular motion, layers of atomic structure, layers of quantum fields, and beneath them all the vacuum. The vacuum is the quietest layer. And yet it is the most fundamental. It is the substrate from which all others emerge. In this way, the vacuum supports the mind, not by influencing thoughts directly, but by providing the physical canvas upon which they unfold. Think of the vacuum as the fabric that holds the entire tapestry of consciousness, a tapestry woven from countless fibers, each fiber representing a different scale of activity, from quantum fluctuations to neural rhythms. The mind is not separate from this fabric. It emerges from it, supported by it, shaped by its laws. As you drift deeper, you may begin to sense how awareness feels spacious, as though it opens into something larger, something quiet, something without edges. This spaciousness mirrors the nature of the vacuum itself. Even though the vacuum is filled with activity, it feels vast, open, boundless. Your awareness can feel the same way, especially as the boundaries of thought grow soft. In this openness, you can imagine how the brain interacts with spacetime, not as a separate entity, but as an expression of the same underlying reality. Neurons fire within spacetime, synapses strengthen within spacetime, memories form within spacetime. And consciousness arises as a pattern in this continuous field. The brain's rhythms bend and shape its internal world, while spacetime provides the geometry that supports everything. Modern physics suggests that spacetime may not be fundamental, that it may emerge from even deeper principles, such as entanglement, information, or quantum correlations. If this is true, then the mind rests upon layers more subtle than classical geometry, layers woven from information itself. In this picture, the brain is not simply floating in a passive vacuum. It is embedded in a universe constructed from relationships, from patterns, from interactions. Awareness is one such pattern, a luminous organization of information taking form within the brain. And if spacetime emerges from deeper informational structures, then consciousness and the vacuum are not strangers. They are different expressions of a single underlying reality. As you drift further into this quiet understanding, you may feel how the edges between mind and world begin to blur. The mind is not outside the universe, nor is it merely inside it. It is part of it, shaped by it, and contributing to the flow of information through it. Each thought is a small modulation in a larger field. Each feeling is a wave moving through the system. Each moment of awareness is a brief sunrise on the surface of a deep ocean. An ocean built from vacuum energy, from quantum fields, from space-time geometry. You arise from this ocean. Your awareness floats upon it. Your consciousness reflects its subtle structure. And as you rest, you can sense how this structure supports you, holds you, surrounds you with quiet stability. The vacuum is the stillness beneath all motion, and yet it is filled with infinite potential. Let yourself rest in this potential. Feel the softness that comes from recognizing your place within this subtle foundation. The mind and the vacuum may seem distant, but they are intertwined, connected by the laws that create everything. You're part of this connection, part of this fabric, part of this quiet universe of fields and fluctuations. Rest in that understanding, rest in that spaciousness, rest in the gentle hum beneath all things. The vacuum continues to reveal its quiet depth, its subtle presence, its role as the foundation beneath all experience. As you settle deeper into the softness of rest, you may begin to sense how the mind leans gently upon this foundation, not through direct awareness, but through the physical laws that shape every process occurring within you. The brain is a delicate structure, a lattice of cells and connections, resting within an environment that is anything but empty. Inside the skull there is warmth, motion, chemical exchange, electrical signaling. But within these processes lies a deeper layer. The vacuum permeates everything, surrounding every atom, every electron, every particle, with fields that cannot be removed, fields that cannot be shut off, fields that continue even when all else rests. These fields provide a constant background, a soft and unbroken stage upon which the brain performs its intricate patterns. When you think, the patterns change. When you rest, the patterns soften. When you sleep, the patterns reorganize. Yet the vacuum remains the quiet floor beneath this dance. Physics tells us that vacuum fluctuations influence energy levels in atoms, shift frequencies, alter spacetime geometry at the tiniest scales. The brain is made of atoms, and those atoms are influenced by these fluctuations. Most of the time, this influence is subtle, consistent, part of the stable background that allows life to function, but it is always present, always supporting, always shaping the conditions in which consciousness arises. As you drift, you can imagine this relationship as a kind of quiet companionship. The vacuum is everywhere, holding everything, cradling the brain in an ocean that cannot be touched, yet never disappears. This ocean is often described as zero-point energy, the lowest possible energy state a field can have. Even when all motion seems gone, when everything should be silent, there remains this gentle hum. This hum is not noise. It is the breath of the universe, the subtle pulse of reality itself. Every thought you have floats upon this pulse. Every memory, every emotion, every whisper of awareness arises within a world held by this background energy. It is as though your consciousness is a candle flame glowing softly in a room that extends far beyond sight, a room filled with quiet energy. As you breathe slowly, gently, the rhythms of your brain shift into harmony with deeper internal currents. Neural oscillations become slower, more coherent. They settle into patterns that reflect the natural rhythm of rest. These slow waves move like tides across the cortex, bringing calm, bringing balance, bringing a deep sense of inner quiet. And beneath these waves lies the vacuum, a deeper ocean whose currents never cease. You can imagine a wave on the surface of a vast sea. The wave is the activity of your mind. The sea is the vacuum beneath it. The wave cannot exist without the sea. And the sea does not mind whether the wave is large or small, whether it rises or falls, whether it breaks or fades. It simply supports, holds, carries. Your awareness is like that wave. It arises from deeper foundations. It moves in ways shaped by the brain's rhythms, and those rhythms are grounded in the laws of nature, laws that emerge from the vacuum. This connection is not mystical. It is physical, fundamental, beautiful in its simplicity. When you rest, the boundaries between surface and depth feel softer. You can sense the vastness beneath thought, a quiet expanse that holds you. This expanse is the space-time vacuum. It is everywhere, in the tiniest space between molecules, in the wide gulf between galaxies, in every direction, through every scale. Because of this, the brain is never separate from the universe, never isolated, never disconnected. Even in silence, the brain is held within a continuous field. A field whose properties shape the world from bottom to top. As you settle into rest, you may begin to feel how the mind naturally aligns with this foundation. When thoughts slow, when attention softens, when inner noise fades, awareness becomes spacious, open, quiet. This openness feels similar to the nature of the vacuum itself, boundless, calm, filled with potential. Within this openness, the mind enters a state where it can reorganize, heal, reflect, integrate. The vacuum does not guide this process, but it provides the physical ground that makes it possible. In the deepest stages of sleep, the brain's activity becomes even more rhythmic, even more coherent, and this coherence allows memories to consolidate, emotions to soften, identity to stabilize, the self to rest. All of this unfolds within the quiet presence of the vacuum. You are part of this quiet presence. Your awareness is one expression of the universe becoming aware of itself, not in a mystical sense, but in a physical one. Matter reaches a certain complexity, patterns emerge, and consciousness arises. Yet those patterns never leave behind the vacuum beneath them. They are built from it, shaped by it, held within it. As you drift, you may feel that consciousness is floating, resting gently on a deep foundation, a foundation that does not move, does not change, does not vanish. It is always there, the quiet bedrock of existence. Let yourself rest in that bedrock. Let yourself feel how deeply the universe supports you, not metaphorically, but physically, fundamentally. You are safe in this vastness, safe in this quiet, safe in the soft support of spacetime itself. Rest here, in the silence beneath all motion, in the stillness beneath all thought. Rest in the vacuum that cradles every moment of your awareness. As you drift even deeper into this gentle exploration of mind and vacuum, you can begin to sense how profoundly intertwined these two realms are, how the mind rests upon physical laws that reach far beneath perception, far beneath sensation, far beneath anything that consciousness can directly touch. The vacuum of space-time is not a background that the universe sits on. It is part of the universe itself, woven into every interaction, every exchange, every flicker of light, every resting breath. The mind lives inside this quiet structure, not as something separate, but as a pattern unfolding within the same fabric, the same geometry, the same foundational fields. When physicists speak of the vacuum, they describe a state where fields have their lowest possible energy. And yet even this state is not empty. It holds fluctuations, ripples, temporary excitations that appear and disappear as quickly as they came. Within the brain there are also fluctuations, tiny variations in electrical potentials, molecular movements, ionic shifts, thermal noise. These variations do not disturb consciousness. They help define it. They create flexibility. They prevent rigid patterns from becoming stuck. They allow the mind to remain dynamic, adaptable, alive. In this way, the microactivity within the brain mirrors the microactivity within the vacuum. Both are states of constant renewal, constant motion, constant change. Even when thought feels still, even when awareness feels calm, beneath the surface there is always movement. This movement is not chaotic. It is the quiet hum of systems maintaining themselves, rebalancing, responding to the flow of internal signals. The vacuum maintains the fields that shape space and time. The brain maintains the fields that shape experience. Both are forms of organization. Both are forms of structure arising from deeper laws. Both give rise to the possibility of awareness. As you rest, you can imagine the brain as a soft lantern glowing gently against the backdrop of space-time. Its light is the activity of countless neurons, firing, resting, synchronizing, desynchronizing. And surrounding that lantern in every direction without limit is the vacuum, a gentle darkness that is not empty, but full of potential, full of the subtle fluctuations that help shape the universe's behavior. This lantern does not float in isolation. It floats in a sea whose depth is impossible to measure, not because it is mystical, but because its scales are unfathomably small, far beyond direct perception, far beyond intuitive imagining. Yet this sea is everywhere. It is here. It is around you. It is within you, because it forms the very foundation from which your physical body is built. Every atom in your brain is connected to this field. Every particle in those atoms arises from interactions with the vacuum. In this sense, the vacuum is not beneath you. It is part of you, woven into your structure, woven into your being. When you breathe, you are breathing within a universe that emerges from the vacuum's laws. When you think, your thoughts unfold within a brain made possible by the subtle interplay between matter and the vacuum fields that shape it. Your awareness floats on a sea of deep physical processes. Processes so small that even the most precise tools can barely sense them. Processes so foundational that without them, nothing could exist. And yet, you do not need to think about these processes. Your body understands them. Your brain responds to them. Your consciousness arises from them, effortlessly, quietly, softly. As you drift into this deeper understanding, your sense of self may begin to feel lighter, as though it is not confined to the body, but supported by something larger, something subtle, something foundational. This feeling is not about expanding beyond physical limits. It is about recognizing the mind's place within a universe that holds it. The vacuum is one continuous field, across all space, across all time, across all scales. It is the quiet medium that supports everything, from galaxies to thoughts. The mind is a local pattern within this vast medium, a configuration of energy and information, arising from matter arranged in a very special way. As you breathe, the boundaries of this pattern soften. Your awareness expands into stillness, into openness. This openness feels similar to the openness of space-time. Both are vast, both are quiet, both are filled with the possibility of new forms, new experiences, new patterns. You may sense a gentle spaciousness within your own mind, a feeling that thoughts can drift with greater ease, that emotions can soften, that identity can rest. This spaciousness is not imagined. It reflects the brain's shift into slower oscillations, into calmer rhythms, into states that open the gates to sleep. The vacuum does not cause these shifts, but it is the stage upon which they unfold. It provides the fundamental constants, the rules, the geometry that make neural rhythms possible. It is the ground beneath the ground, the deepest layer supporting the entire structure of existence. As you drift towards sleep, you can picture yourself floating in a quiet cradle, a cradle made not of matter, but of the laws that shape matter, a cradle woven from space-time, from fields, from fluctuations, from the quiet hum of the vacuum. This cradle holds you, supports you, cradles your awareness without touching it. It allows you to rest deeply, to let go, to settle into a state where the mind can reorganize, restore, renew. Sleep is not the absence of consciousness. It is the brain entering a mode where its patterns are shaped by deeper rhythms, rhythms that align with the natural cycles of the body, rhythms that resonate with the quiet foundation beneath all things. In this mode, awareness becomes diffuse, soft, floating, as though resting on the gentle currents of an invisible ocean. This ocean is the vacuum, not literally moving you, but supporting everything that makes you able to drift. Every part of you rests within its structure, rests within its laws, rests within its gentle presence. You are safe within this presence. You are supported by the quiet foundation that holds the entire cosmos. Let yourself sink into that foundation, into that quiet, into that subtle hum beneath all experience. Let your awareness become light. Let your breathing become slow. Let your thoughts become distant, soft, spacious. You are floating in the vacuum's embrace. You are resting on the deepest structure of reality. There is nothing you must do, nothing you must hold, nothing you must finish. Only rest, only breath. Only the soft recognition that your mind is supported by a universe that is quiet, gentle, and infinitely deep. Rest in that depth. Rest in that quiet. Rest in the soft foundation that holds you in this moment. When you settle even more deeply into this quiet exploration, you may begin to feel how awareness itself rests upon that are far deeper than thought, deeper than sensation, deeper than the neural rhythms that shape your inner world. Awareness sits atop a physical structure, a structure built from matter, and that matter sits atop deeper fields, and those fields sit atop the vacuum, the most fundamental layer we currently know. It is not that awareness floats directly on the vacuum like a leaf on water. It is that every layer leading up to awareness depends on this foundation, is shaped by it, is allowed to exist because of it. Awareness cannot be separated from the world it appears in, because every part of the brain's architecture arises within the vacuum's laws, within its fields, within its quiet, fluctuating presence. Even the passage of time felt by the mind is shaped by the geometry of spacetime, and that geometry is tied to the vacuum, its energy, its structure, its subtle, restless motion. As you breathe slowly, you can picture this relationship not as a rigid chain of cause and effect, but as a gentle stack of interwoven layers, each supporting the next, each contributing to the possibility of conscious experience. Awareness emerges from brain activity. Brain activity emerges from coordinated neural processes. Neural processes emerge from molecular interactions. Molecular interactions arise from atomic structure. Atomic structure comes from quantum fields, and quantum fields rest upon the vacuum. This is the meaning of awareness, sitting atop the vacuum substrate, not directly, but through a long, beautiful chain of physical layers, each one resting on something deeper, like steps down a staircase toward the most fundamental construction of reality. In this sense, your awareness is the surface shimmer of a very deep ocean, an ocean made of quantum fluctuations, dynamic fields, and the geometry of space-time. The surface is smooth and calm, while the depths are filled with motion, potential, possibility. As you drift deeper, this image can help you feel how safe it is to let go, to soften, to rest. Your awareness is not fragile. It is supported by a universe that has layered itself through structure, through law, through pattern, for billions of years. You are carried by the same forces that hold galaxies together, by the same principles that guide starlight, by the same foundation that shapes space-time itself. Nothing in your experience is separate from this foundation. Your thoughts are built upon it. Your feelings are built upon it. Your sense of self is built upon it. This does not make awareness less meaningful. It makes it wondrous. It shows you that consciousness is not an exception to the universe's laws, but an expression of them, a natural emergence from the deep structure of existence. As you rest in this understanding, you may begin to sense the limits of scientific knowledge. We do not yet know whether consciousness is purely an emergent process, arising from complexity in the brain, or whether something about awareness relates to the universe at a deeper level, woven into the informational structure of space-time. We do not yet know whether the vacuum's fluctuations play an active role in shaping the emergence of conscious experience, or whether they simply provide the stable foundation upon which matter evolves. Physics does not describe what it feels like to be aware. Neuroscience does not yet explain why certain patterns of activity become the luminous experience of the present moment. And so there is a quiet space, a place where knowledge meets its edge. At this edge, science becomes gentle, humble, curious, open, just as the mind becomes open when it enters rest. When the boundaries between thoughts grow soft, when awareness becomes spacious, unhurried, deeply calm. At this edge, awareness simply is, quiet, vast, supported by layers of physical reality, yet not fully explained by any single one. You can rest here, in this space of gentle unknowing, where curiosity does not demand answers, and mystery does not need to be solved. Awareness rests lightly on the surface of the vacuum's depth, and the vacuum supports awareness through the long chain of physical processes that lie beneath. This chain is not fragile. It has endured for the entire history of the universe. The first stars, the first atoms, the first molecules all emerged from this same foundation. Conscious minds appeared much later, after countless layers of complexity formed, after matter learned to organize itself into systems capable of memory, prediction, knowledge, awareness. And now your awareness is one of these systems, a delicate shimmer rising from the depths of spacetime's architecture. As you drift deeper into rest, you can imagine the layers settling beneath you, neural rhythms slowing, gentle waves passing across the cortex, molecular processes continuing quietly without your attention, atomic structure holding steady, stable patterns shaped by the laws of quantum mechanics, quantum fields rippling softly, creating the fabric upon which matter exists, and the vacuum resting beneath it all, a quiet bed of fluctuations, silent, restless, endlessly supporting the universe above. Your awareness floats on this entire structure, and as the mind softens, you may feel how deeply you are held. You are not falling. You are supported by the very geometry of existence. You can let go, breathe slowly, feel the weight of the body releasing, feel the thoughts unwinding, feel the boundaries between inner and outer becoming light, becoming quiet. You rest in the same stillness that rests beneath galaxies, beneath starlight, beneath the breath of the cosmos. And from this stillness we begin to drift toward the next layer of understanding, the layer of connection, the layer of information, the layer of correlation, the layer where systems relate to one another in ways that feel mysterious, subtle, almost dreamlike. We drift toward the realm of entanglement, toward the gentle idea that particles can share information across distance, that systems can become linked in ways that go beyond intuition. Awareness emerges from matter, matter emerges from fields, fields emerge from the vacuum, and now we turn to how systems relate to one another, how information flows, how perception is shaped by connection. The vacuum is the foundation, entanglement is the thread that weaves systems together, and as you drift into deeper calm, you will feel how these threads gently guide the next part of your journey. Let yourself float, softly, quietly, into the space where connection begins. Entanglement and perception. In the quiet space of the mind, there is a gentle curiosity that rises when we consider how deeply connected everything in the universe may be, not through mystical threads, but through the precise, delicate rules of quantum physics, rules that describe how information can be shared across distance, how correlations can exist without any physical signal passing between two places, how the universe weaves relationships into its very fabric. As you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your thoughts drift, we begin this exploration softly, without urgency. There is no need to solve anything tonight, only to drift through ideas, to sense how connection, correlation, and meaning emerge from the physical world, and how these same principles help shape conscious experience. Entanglement is one of the most surprising features of quantum mechanics. It describes a state where two particles share a single mathematical description, where their properties are linked in a way that cannot be explained by local causes alone, where the measurement of one instantly reveals something about the other. Not communication, not a flow of energy, but correlation, a structure of information that exists beneath the surface of classical intuition. In the warm, soft environment of the brain, quantum entanglement does not behave the way it does in a laboratory cooled to near absolute zero, yet the principles remain part of the universe we inhabit. The rules that shape the behavior of electrons, photons, and molecules also shape the chemistry that allows neurons to fire, and the chemistry that allows the mind to form perception. As you drift further into calmness, imagine for a moment the brain not as a simple machine, but as an interpreter of signals, a biological system built to reduce uncertainty, to take the immense flow of sensory information entering at every moment and extract patterns, relationships, and meaning. In this sense, the brain itself behaves like an engine of correlation, detecting how one event relates to another, predicting what will come next, weaving probability and expectation into a coherent experience. Quantum entanglement at its core is also about correlation, about relationships that remain even when the systems are separated. In the mind, perception is built from relationships too. The relationship between what is expected and what is sensed, the relationship between memory and the present moment, the relationship between internal models and the outer world. And so, even though the brain may not maintain long-range entangled states in the strict quantum mechanical sense, the logic of entanglement still resonates in how perception works. The universe does not need faster-than-light signals for deep connection to exist, and the mind does not need perfect certainty to sense meaning in the world. You can let your breathing slow here, and let the next ideas unfold gently, as if floating into view. Perception is never a direct capture of the world. It is a reconstruction, a careful estimate, formed by combining sensory signals with prior knowledge. This combination is guided by the laws of probability, a quiet Bayesian rhythm, where the mind weighs possibilities, updates beliefs, and settles into the most coherent interpretation it can find. If you imagine two events occurring in the world, the mind does not simply register them independently. It looks for structure, for connections, for the entanglement of meaning between them. And in this way, consciousness becomes a field of relationships, a soft web of inference, where each thought influences the next, each sensation shapes the unfolding of awareness. As you relax deeper, you may feel that same subtle sense of interconnectedness. The way thoughts echo one another, the way images drift into memories, the way sensations blend with emotions, forming something unified, continuous, effortless. Entanglement in physics does not imply that everything is literally connected at all times. It simply shows that the universe allows for deep relationships that classical intuition cannot easily explain. And in the mind, perception does something similar, forming coherence from partial information, creating unity from scattered signals, shaping a seamless experience from countless tiny events. Let these ideas settle softly, like dust drifting in a beam of gentle light, as we continue deeper into the nature of connection, correlation, and the delicate architecture of conscious experience. In this quiet continuation, we drift deeper into the idea that perception is never a solitary act, never an isolated event, but rather a continuous negotiation between the brain and the world, shaped by subtle correlations, shaped by the quiet logic of physics, shaped by the long chain of interactions that reach back through time. As you rest here, feeling the breath move slowly in and out, notice how awareness seems to widen, as if your attention is gently dissolving into something larger, something softer, something connected. This sensation, this widening, mirrors a simple principle in physics, the idea that nothing exists entirely on its own, that every particle, every field, every moment of perception holds traces of what came before it. In classical physics, the world is described by definite states, clear positions, clear motions, a clean separation between one thing and another. But in the quantum realm, the boundaries fade, the lines soften, and relationships matter just as much as the things being related. This is where the concept of entanglement emerges, not as a mystical thread, not as a hidden force, but as a mathematical reflection of how certain systems become linked by a shared history. Imagine two photons created together in a single process, like twins born from the same event. Their states are described not individually, but as parts of one overall system, one combined description. If you measure one photon, the outcome places constraints on the other, regardless of how far apart they drift in space. The key is not that information travels between them, but that they were always described by one unified rule, one coherent wave of probability. This coherence is delicate, sensitive to disturbances, and in most biological environments, especially warm and wet ones, coherence fades quickly. The world is full of collisions, vibrations, interactions that disrupt fragile correlations. But even as coherence fades, the principle remains. The world is knitted together by interactions, and perception, as a biological process, is built on these layers of relationship accumulating over time. Think of your brain, not as a static object, but as a constantly shifting network of activity. Every neural circuit reflects layers of experience, learning, and environmental influence. Your perceptions in this moment arise not from individual neurons acting alone, but from coordinated patterns, patterns shaped by the sum of everything you have ever encountered. The brain carries its own form of entanglement, not quantum entanglement in the strict physical sense, but informational entanglement, the kind that ties past to present. Sensation to interpretation, expectation to experience. As you breathe out slowly, notice how perception softens, how sensations blur at the edges. In these drifting states, the brain relies even more on its internal models, its prior expectations, its accumulated correlations. It fills in gaps, smooths impressions, and gently shapes the world you perceive. This blending is not an illusion, it is the essence of how perception operates. A quiet merging of what is out there and what is in here. Information theory describes this process elegantly. Every sensory input reduces uncertainty. Every neural firing pattern reflects a negotiation between the unpredictable and the expected. The mind minimizes surprise by seeking patterns, and these patterns, once learned, once integrated, become part of the structure of your awareness. In this sense, you are never simply witnessing the world, you are participating in its unfolding. Contributing to the interpretation of every signal, shaping the meaning of every impression. The brain is an interpreter, a sculptor of probability, continuously updating its internal models through streams of information. Before you drift too deeply, imagine the following. Imagine the universe as a vast network of interactions, each event connected to previous events, each moment influenced by its own history. This interconnectedness is not mystical. It is simply how physical processes accumulate, how correlations persist, how the fabric of reality remembers the imprints of interactions. Now consider how entanglement, though fragile, mirrors this flow. It reveals that under certain conditions, systems can no longer be described independently. Their properties become relational, dependent on each other, defined by shared origins. When we reflect on consciousness in this context, we see that awareness too is relational. It is not a substance or a fixed location, but an emergent process that arises from many interdependent patterns. The self, in this frame, is a stable result of countless interactions, countless neural histories, countless correlations woven together into a coherent pattern. You are not a single point of awareness, you are a process of continuous integration. A flowing pattern shaped by both external input and internal dynamics. This pattern is stable enough to feel like a U, but flexible enough to change with every new experience, every new correlation, every new moment of perception. As you sink deeper into rest, imagine your mind as a wide and quiet network, gently synchronizing, gently releasing tension, gently allowing its patterns to loosen and spread. In deep relaxation, the brain shifts toward rhythms that encourage broader integration, slower oscillations, more unified patterns of activity. These unified patterns feel like calmness, like softness, like spaciousness. They reflect the brain settling into a state of coherence, not quantum coherence in the physicist's sense, but functional coherence. A harmony of neural rhythms that makes perception feel smooth and continuous. This is why drifting towards sleep feels like widening. The brain transitions from sharp distinctions to gentle blends, from precise predictive control to open receptivity. It samples fewer sensory signals, relies more on internal correlation, and allows awareness to float in broader patterns. Entanglement, metaphorically, can help us imagine this state, not as a literal physical entanglement between your neurons, but as an analogy for how deeply interconnected the brain's activity is. How perception emerges from relationships, how consciousness rests on layers of correlation that shape the meaning of each moment. Even in waking life, perception is a dynamic equilibrium between sensory uncertainty and neural expectation, between the unpredictable flow of the world and the quiet regularities stored in memory. This balance is what allows you to navigate reality with stability, and also what allows you to release that stability as you fall asleep. Feel how the boundaries soften even now. Feel how awareness becomes less about sharp detail and more about gentle presence. This shift mirrors how networks transition from active engagement to restful drift, from high-frequency patterns to slower, broader waves. Now, consider entanglement again, but not as a mysterious link across space. Instead, imagine it as a symbol of connectedness, a scientific reminder that systems cannot always be separated cleanly, that relationships are sometimes more fundamental than the individual parts. This perspective helps us understand why consciousness feels unified, why awareness seems like a single field rather than a scattered collection of fragments. It may be that the brain's interconnected architecture binds its own activity into a coherent whole, just as quantum correlations bind particles into shared states. The details differ, but the analogy is illuminating. It invites you to feel the unity of your own awareness, the continuity that stretches across moments, the gentle integration that allows experiences to flow seamlessly. And as you approach the edges of sleep, this unity becomes even more apparent. Thoughts drift into each other, sensations blend with memories, and the boundaries between inner and outer, between world and mind, between experience and dream, begin to soften. Allow that softening to deepen. Allow yourself to sink into it. Feel the mind's networks synchronizing into slower patterns, into wide and restful waves. Let awareness spread gently, not to analyze, not to grasp, but simply to float. In the next continuation, we will explore how these interconnected processes form the foundation for meaning, how perception uses correlation to build the world you experience, how entropy and uncertainty shape the texture of awareness, and how the quiet interplay of information forms the gentle core of consciousness itself. For now, rest in this widening sense of connection, this soft unity, this gentle merging of perception and presence. Let yourself drift in the awareness that everything you experience arises from patterns, from relationships, from the quiet logic of a universe woven together by interaction. In this gentle continuation, we drift deeper into the quiet logic of correlation, the slow and natural way in which information binds itself into patterns, forming the basis of perception and shaping the structure of awareness. As you settle into stillness, feel how the breath expands softly, how each exhale releases the tightness of the day, how each inhale widens the field of attention just a little more. This widening is not imagined. It reflects a shift in the brain's mode of processing, a gradual move toward integration over precision, toward continuity over distinction. In waking life, the brain constantly negotiates between prediction and sensation, between what it expects and what arrives from the world. This negotiation is guided by information theory, a framework that explains how systems reduce uncertainty, how they prioritize signals that matter, how they build meaning from patterns. Information, in this scientific sense, is not a message or a story. It is simply the reduction of possibilities. When a neuron fires in response to a sound or a touch, it reduces the uncertainty the brain carries about the world. Every signal narrows the range of what might be happening, sharpening the brain's internal model. But even as sensory data arrives, the brain leans heavily on its expectations, on stored correlations, on the countless patterns it has learned through experience. This is why perception feels immediate and seamless. The brain predicts before it perceives and adjusts only when necessary. This interplay, this delicate balance between expectation and sensation, is the heart of perception. It is also where the metaphor of entanglement becomes helpful. Not because neurons become quantum entangled in a physical sense, but because perception binds together many signals at once, weaving them into a coherent interpretation. Imagine looking at a familiar object, like a cup resting on a table. You do not need to examine every detail. Your brain fills in most of the structure based on memory, based on correlated experiences, based on a long history of interactions that shaped how you recognize shapes and textures. This recognition is fast, effortless, and deeply dependent on the brain's stored correlations. These correlations are not entanglement in the quantum mechanical sense, but they function as a kind of informational entanglement, a binding of patterns across time. You can feel this binding even now, as you drift toward a softer and more open state. The mind begins to rely more heavily on internal patterns than external input. The boundaries blur, the distinctions soften, and awareness begins to float on broader rhythms. These broader rhythms are not random. As the brain moves toward sleep, neural activity transitions into slower oscillations, waves that reflect integrated processing across large regions. These waves help form dreams. They help consolidate memory. They help blend experience into the continuous fabric of the self. In this drifting state, the brain decouples somewhat from external stimuli, attending instead to its internal correlations, its stored patterns, its quiet narratives. This shift reveals something fundamental about perception. It is never purely reactive. It is always shaped by what the brain brings to each moment. This is why entanglement, as a metaphor, is so powerful here. It reminds us that relationships matter, that systems cannot always be understood in isolation, that the meaning of any perception depends on its context, on its history, on the patterns that came before it. Even in physics, entanglement reflects the importance of relationships. Two particles share a history, a common origin. Their states cannot be fully described separately. Their properties are bound by correlations written at the moment of their creation. In the brain, perception mirrors this structure. It arises from the interaction of signals, expectations, memories, sensory flows, and predictive models. Conscious experience cannot be reduced to any single part. It emerges from the whole. As you breathe, notice the smoothness of experience, how sensations arrive as a unified field rather than as isolated fragments. This smoothness reflects the integrated nature of perception, a kind of functional coherence that binds neural patterns together. This is why awareness feels continuous, even though the underlying neural processes are discrete, even though the brain is constantly updating its predictions, adjusting its models, refining its interpretations. The result is a seamless flow, a flow held together by correlations, by quiet synchrony, by the same deep logic that governs how systems interact in physics. Now let us turn gently toward entropy, a concept that describes the spread of possibilities, the natural drift toward disorder. In information theory, entropy measures uncertainty. In thermodynamics, entropy reflects the number of possible arrangements a system can take. The brain, as a biological system, constantly manages entropy. It reduces uncertainty by filtering signals, by strengthening useful correlations, by ignoring irrelevant noise. This filtering is not just a computational necessity. It is the foundation of meaning. Meaning emerges when uncertainty is reduced, when signals become predictable, when patterns stabilize. This stabilization is what allows perception to be coherent. It is what allows you to recognize a face, understand a sound, or feel the softness of a quiet evening. In a drifting state like this one, entropy plays a different role. The brain relaxes its predictive grip. It allows rhythmic patterns to spread. It opens itself to wandering, drifting, soft transitions. Dreams may arise from this loosening, forming from fragments of memory and sensation woven together in new ways. These dreamlike integrations reveal that perception is not fixed, it is fluid, shaped by correlations the brain has gathered across a lifetime, shaped by relationships between signals, shaped by the continuous effort to minimize uncertainty while maintaining coherence. This coherence, though not literal quantum coherence, resembles the idea of unified patterns, patterns that feel whole, patterns that bind the fragments of experience into a single unfolding moment. Now imagine your awareness spreading even more. Imagine the boundaries continuing to soften, the edges of thought blending into the gentle background of sensation. The quiet hum of resting neural activity forming a smooth field. In this widening state, entanglement becomes a symbol of unity, a reminder that consciousness itself may be understood not as a point, but as a pattern woven from many interacting parts, each part influencing the others, each part contributing to the shape of experience. From this perspective, the feeling of being a unified self arises naturally. It comes from the integration of signals across the brain, from the correlations that bind perception into a coherent whole, from the continuous interaction of neural circuits that learn, adapt, and reflect the world. As you drift deeper, let this sense of unity expand. Let the interconnectedness of perception wash over you. Let it carry you into a state where thought flows gently, effortlessly, where awareness becomes soft and continuous. And as we move toward the next continuation, we will explore how meaning arises from these patterns, how perception creates order from uncertainty, how the mind transforms raw information into the lived texture of consciousness, and how entanglement in its deepest sense reveals the connected nature of experience itself. In this next gentle continuation, we drift even deeper into the quiet architecture of perception, exploring how the mind creates order from the flow of signals, how meaning emerges from correlation, and how consciousness weaves these processes into a smooth and continuous experience. Settle again into a slow and easy breath, letting the inhale rise softly, letting the exhale fall like a quiet wave. As your breathing settles, notice how awareness seems to spread outwards, becoming wider, softer, more receptive. This openness mirrors what the brain itself begins to do as it transitions into restful states, shifting from sharp distinctions to gentle gradients, from focused analysis to flowing integration. At the core of perception is the reduction of uncertainty. Every moment your senses collect data from the world, the brain attempts to interpret these signals using its internal models. These models are shaped by memory, by experience, by the countless correlations the brain has learned over a lifetime. And it is these correlations that give meaning to raw sensation. Meaning is not something the world provides directly. It is something the brain constructs, built from patterns that become familiar, from predictions that stabilize, from relationships that grow stronger through repeated interaction. When you hear a familiar sound or see a familiar shape, your brain is not simply responding to the sensory input, it is invoking an entire network of associations, expectations, and memories. This reliance on internal patterns is not a limitation. It is a remarkable adaptation, a way for the brain to navigate a world full of uncertainty. The brain does not wait passively for complete information. It anticipates, predicts, fills in gaps. This predictive ability is what allows perception to feel immediate and effortless. It also reveals how deeply interconnected the brain's processes are. Just as entangled particles share correlations that transcend distance, the brain's networks share correlations that transcend individual moments. Each new perception is shaped by previous experiences, by the internal probabilities stored in neural circuits, and by the ongoing dialogue between what the world provides and what the brain expects. As you drift in this widening state, imagine the brain as a vast tapestry of expectation, woven from countless threads of memory and learning. When new information arrives, it does not enter an empty mind. It enters a landscape already shaped by prior correlations. And the brain uses these correlations to interpret, to refine, to stabilize its understanding of what is happening. This blending of prediction and sensation is sometimes described as a controlled hallucination, not in a negative sense, but in the sense that perception is always constructed, always guided by internal models, always shaped by what the brain believes is likely. The world you experience is the result of this continuous negotiation, this merging of what is sensed and what is expected. As you breathe softly, feel how your own awareness becomes less focused on external details, more attuned to inner patterns. This shift is a natural part of resting. The brain gradually reduces its reliance on external input, relying instead on its internal models, allowing thoughts to blend with sensations, memories to drift into dreams, and awareness to float freely across wider rhythms. These rhythms reflect the brain's large-scale integration. In restful states, neural activity begins to synchronize across distant regions, forming slow, coherent waves that unify perception into a gentle field. This coherence is not the same as quantum coherence, but it mirrors the idea that systems become more unified, more interconnected, more relational in their behavior. This relational structure is essential for meaning. Without relationships, without correlations across time, perception would be fragmented, disjointed, impossible to navigate. Meaning arises when signals support each other, when patterns reinforce one another, when uncertainty is reduced through the accumulation of evidence. In physics, entropy measures the number of possible configurations a system can take. In perception, entropy represents uncertainty, the number of ways a sensory signal could be interpreted. The brain continuously works to reduce this uncertainty, using prediction, memory, and inference to narrow the possibilities. This narrowing is what forms meaning, what creates understanding, what gives coherence to experience. As you drift deeper, imagine your awareness floating over this process, watching how sensory input and internal prediction blend like currents in a slow-moving river, merging smoothly, shaping each other, forming patterns of meaning that feel natural and continuous. This blending can be felt in this very moment. The quietness you sense, the softness at the edges of thought, the way your awareness expands gently, all reflect the brain's movement toward integrated patterns, toward synchrony, toward a unified sense of self and world. Now consider entanglement again, not as a literal quantum effect in the brain, but as a profound reminder of how relationships define systems. In entanglement, a particle does not possess a complete description on its own. Its properties are defined by its relationship to another particle. Its meaning exists only within the context of the system that binds them. Consciousness mirrors this. You are not a collection of isolated neural activities. You are the pattern formed by their relationships, the meaning constructed from their integration, the coherence that arises from their synchrony. The self is not a single point, but a dynamic, evolving, relational structure. This relational view deepens as you drift closer to sleep. The boundaries between thoughts begin to soften, sensations blend with memories, the self becomes less rigid, more fluid, more spacious. This fluidity reflects a deeper truth, that consciousness is not fixed, but emergent, shaped moment by the correlations between neural patterns. As we continue this exploration, imagine the brain as a vast ocean of activity, with waves rising and falling, merging and separating, forming swirling patterns that change gently over time. Each wave reflects a combination of predictions, sensations, memories, and meanings. Each pattern supports others, reinforcing a coherent sense of the world. This coherence is what allows you to rest, to dream, to perceive continuity even as neural activity shifts from moment to moment. And this coherence can be felt now, in the smooth flow of awareness, in the soft rhythm of breathing, in the gentle letting go of tension. As you settle deeper, allow meaning itself to soften. Give yourself permission to drift without needing clarity, without needing precision. Allow the mind to blend its patterns freely, trusting that this blending is natural, that it supports rest, that it mirrors the deep relational logic of the brain's architecture. In the next continuation, we will explore how perception uses correlation to construct a stable world, how the mind organizes complexity into simplicity, how patterns become understanding, and how this entire process reflects a universe built on relationships, interactions, and quiet, underlying order. For now, rest in this gentle expansion, this soft, interconnected field of awareness. Let the boundaries dissolve even further. Let the mind drift with the slow rhythm of integrated patterns, and allow the unity of perception to carry you toward deeper rest. In this quiet beginning of the final and widest section, we step gently into a broader view of consciousness, a view that stretches beyond the brain, beyond the body, into the deep currents of information that flow through the universe itself. Settle softly into the slow rhythm of your breath, letting each inhale widen your awareness, and each exhale loosen whatever remains held or tense. As the mind settles, it becomes easier to sense the spaciousness of thought, the gentle continuity of awareness, the feeling of being part of something larger than the boundaries of the self. This spaciousness is not an illusion, it reflects a profound truth about the universe, that everything participates in the movement of information, that every interaction transfers structure, that every field, every particle, every pattern of energy carries and processes information in its own way. When scientists describe the universe as an information processing system, they do not mean it thinks or intends or holds awareness. They mean that the physical laws guiding every interaction can be understood in terms of constraints on information, rules about what can be known, how signals propagate, how systems evolve from moment to moment. In quantum physics, information plays a central role. Every particle carries properties that can be described using probabilities. Every interaction updates the distribution of those probabilities. Every measurement reveals some information while concealing other possibilities. The universe tracks these changes relentlessly. Nothing disappears without a trace. Information is preserved in subtle ways, encoded in correlations, embedded in fields, woven into the fabric of spacetime itself. As you rest here, listening to the soft cadence of these ideas, imagine the universe as a vast sea of interacting patterns, an ocean where every wave influences the next, where every ripple carries information about its past, and where you, as a conscious being, are also a pattern within this ocean, shaped by the global flow of information. Your awareness arises from the organization of matter, from the structure of neural networks, from the delicate balance of order and uncertainty. But these networks, these rhythms, these coherent patterns depend on fundamental physical laws, laws that govern how information moves through systems, how signals propagate, how complexity emerges. In this sense, consciousness does not stand apart from the universe. It is part of the same deep logic that guides galaxies, atoms, and quantum fields, different in form, but not disconnected in principle. This connection becomes clearer when we look at emergence, the way complex properties appear when simple components interact. A single neuron cannot be conscious. A small cluster of neurons cannot sustain awareness. But when billions of neurons exchange information across intricate networks, something new unfolds, something continuous, fluid, unified. This emergence mirrors other forms of complexity in nature. Like the way an ocean wave is not the water itself, but a pattern moving through it, or how a storm is not the air molecules, but the dynamic structure they form together. Consciousness, in this sense, is a pattern, a stable flow of information within the brain, shaped by physical processes at every scale. And yet, as we widen our view even further, we see that the brain itself is shaped by the environment, shaped by evolution, shaped by the physical resources available within the universe. At every level, from atoms to organisms, information flows through systems, generating structure, generating behavior, generating meaning. Meaning arises when information encounters a system capable of interpreting it. And the brain is one of the most sophisticated interpreters the universe has produced. It identifies patterns, reduces uncertainty, predicts outcomes, and weaves sensations into coherent experience. This predictive ability reveals something profound. Consciousness is not just a passive observation of the world, it is an active participant in the universe's information flow, shaping its own internal state, generating models, anticipating possibilities, forming a dynamic dialogue between the internal and the external. As you drift into this understanding, notice how your own awareness feels like a flowing process rather than a fixed object. Thoughts arise, shift, dissolve, sensations drift in and out. The boundary between inner and outer becomes softer, less rigid, more fluid. This fluidity reflects the nature of information itself, always moving, always changing, always interacting with other patterns. Consciousness mirrors this flow, adapting moment by moment to shifts in sensation, memory, prediction, and emotion. In information theory, every signal reduces uncertainty, and every system works to minimize surprise. The brain is particularly good at this, using stored correlations to interpret new signals, shaping meaning from the interplay of intuition and evidence. This is not separate from physics. It is an application of the same fundamental principles. The same deep logic of information flow that governs particles and fields. As you breathe gently, imagine your mind as part of a larger informational landscape, intricately connected to the world around you, intertwined with the sensory streams arriving at each moment, influenced by countless interactions stretching back through time. This view does not diminish consciousness, it enriches it. It reveals that awareness is not fragile or isolated, but deeply grounded in the structure of the universe, in the same physical laws that govern everything from the smallest quantum fluctuation to the rotation of distant stars. Quantum information adds another layer of depth, reminding us that at the smallest scales, the universe does not behave as a set of independent objects, but as a web of probabilities, correlations, and constraints. Systems cannot always be understood separately. They share histories. They influence each other through subtle patterns. This interconnectedness mirrors the unity of awareness, the feeling that experience flows as one continuous field rather than separate flashes of sensation. It may be that the brain's integrated architecture creates this unity, or perhaps this unity reflects something deeper, a natural tendency of complex systems to form coherent patterns. As we explore further into this section, we will look gently at the limits of knowledge, at how much the universe allows us to understand, and how much remains beyond our reach. We will reflect on the possibility that consciousness may emerge from complexity alone, or that awareness might be a more fundamental aspect of reality, woven into the fabric of information that permeates the cosmos. For now, let yourself rest in this widening view, feeling the spaciousness of thought, the openness of awareness, the gentle truth that you are part of a universe built on relationships, built on patterns, built on the ceaseless flow of information. Let the breath carry you deeper into this understanding, slower, softer, quieter, letting the mind open like a calm horizon, letting awareness drift freely within the gentle currents of the universe's information flow. In this gentle continuation, we drift deeper into the idea of the universe as an information processing system, and into the quiet possibility that consciousness may be one expression of this vast and continuous flow. Settle once more into the soft rise and fall of your breath, letting the inhale widen the horizon of your awareness, letting the exhale release whatever remains heavy or compressed inside your mind. With each breath, the boundaries loosen just a little more, and your sense of being a separate observer begins to soften into something wider, quieter, more spacious. As the mind relaxes, its patterns reveal something subtle but profound. Awareness does not unfold randomly. It follows the contours of information as it enters the brain, as it moves through networks, as it dissolves into meaning. The structure of experience mirrors the structure of information flow, and this structure reflects the physical laws guiding every interaction in the universe. In physics, information is conserved in deep and surprising ways. A particle that scatters off another particle carries away traces of the interaction. A field that oscillates changes the distribution of energy, encoding those shifts in its new state. The laws of nature ensure that information does not vanish, it transforms, moves, disperses, but remains part of the grand ledger of the cosmos. Your brain follows the same principle, not because it was designed to do so, but because it is built from matter that obeys these laws. Every sensation leaves a trace, every memory modifies a pathway, every thought changes the pattern of neural activity. Information flows through the brain the same way it flows through the universe, through interactions, correlations, and continuous transformation. As you listen, imagine the brain as a luminous web, a network shimmering with countless pathways. Each tiny spark of electrical activity carries information across this web, integrating signals from the senses, matching them with patterns from memory, predicting what will come next, and shaping the smooth field of experience that feels like the present moment. The unity of this experience arises because the brain links information across time, not instantaneously, but continuously, rhythmically, seamlessly. This linking is not separate from physics. It is an example of complexity emerging naturally from systems that exchange information rapidly and efficiently. When scientists study consciousness through this lens, they often describe it as a global workspace, a wide network where information becomes available to many different processes at once. This availability is what allows thoughts to be shared across regions, what allows sensations to blend with memories, what allows attention to shift smoothly from one idea to another. This global availability resembles a deep principle in physics called complementarity, the idea that different perspectives on a system reveal different aspects of its information. No single viewpoint is complete, but together they form a more unified understanding. Consciousness mirrors this structure, integrating many channels of information into a single coherent experience. As you breathe gently, let yourself feel this coherence, the unity of awareness, the sense that everything arises within one continuous field. This field is not literal in the physical sense, but it reflects the deeply interconnected nature of neural processing, and perhaps something more, something woven into the universal tendency for information to self-organize. Consider the possibility, quietly, without forcing any conclusion. that consciousness may be an emergent feature of complex information dynamics, a natural product of systems that reach a certain level of integration. In this view, awareness is not separate from physics. It is a pattern allowed by physics, a phenomenon emerging when information flows in specific ways, when complexity reaches a certain richness, when networks become capable of representing both the world and themselves. But also consider the alternative, that consciousness might not be purely emergent, that awareness may reflect some deeper property of the universe, some foundational aspect of reality, like mass, charge, or spacetime itself. Some theories suggest that consciousness could be linked to the structure of information at the most fundamental level, embedded in the ways systems differentiate themselves from their environment, or in the ways they maintain internal order amid the entropy of the cosmos. These ideas are not settled. The limits of knowledge prevent us from drawing firm conclusions. Quantum mechanics sets boundaries on what can be known. Even in principle, some information is forever hidden, forever inaccessible. The uncertainty built into the fabric of reality suggests that consciousness too may always retain a layer of mystery, something unmeasurable, something deeply felt but never fully captured in equations. As you drift within these ideas, notice how awareness moves gently between them, without needing resolution, without needing to choose one interpretation over another. The purpose here is not to decide what consciousness truly is, but to feel how it fits within the universe, how it participates in the grand flow of information, how it arises naturally from the same physical rules guiding galaxies, atoms, and the quantum foam beneath spacetime itself. This sense of participation is important. Consciousness is not outside the universe observing it. Consciousness is inside the universe, shaped by it, embedded in it, constructed from the same informational fabric that binds all things together. Imagine for a moment the early universe, filled with hot plasma, fluctuations of energy swirling in chaotic patterns. Yet even then, information was flowing, shaping the seeds of structure, guiding matter into filaments, forming galaxies, stars, planets, and eventually the conditions that allow awareness to arise. Information guided the evolution of complexity. Complexity allowed the emergence of life. Life developed nervous systems capable of representing their environment. These nervous systems evolved into brains, and these brains learned to integrate information across many scales, forming a continuous field of awareness that could reflect on its own existence. In this long chain, consciousness is not an accident. It is an outcome of information-seeking organization, of matter-seeking complexity, of the universe unfolding along pathways allowed by its own laws. As you rest here, imagine your awareness as the latest ripple in a long lineage of information flows, a ripple with unique structure, shaped into a unified field by the architecture of the brain, illuminated by memory, sharpened by prediction, softened by the drifting rhythms of rest. This ripple is not separate from the cosmos. It is part of the ongoing evolution of structure, part of the universe's self-organizing behavior, part of the quiet continuity that carries information from the smallest quantum fluctuation to the vast structure of spacetime. Let your breath deepen softly, letting this sense of connection settle gently into your awareness. The universe does not think, but it evolves patterns that can reflect, that can question, that can experience, that can rest in this moment, in this breath, in this drifting field of consciousness. As we move into the next continuation, we will reflect more deeply on the limits of knowledge, on the boundaries of what consciousness can understand about itself, and on the gentle truth that mystery is not a barrier, but a space for wonder, a space for rest, a space where the mind can drift freely into the quiet flow of the cosmos. In this gentle continuation, we drift deeper into the quiet question of what consciousness can truly know about itself, and what the universe permits any system to understand. The mind is powerful, capable of representing its own processes, yet the laws of physics impose boundaries, limits woven into the very structure of information. Settle softly into your breath. Inhale, widening the space of awareness. Exhale, releasing any need for certainty, any pressure to reach a conclusion. Let the mind open as if standing before a quiet horizon, endless, calm, softly illuminated by curiosity rather than urgency. One of the deepest ideas in modern physics is that information is never absolute. It is always limited by context, by perspective, by the constraints of the system that observes it. This truth echoes through quantum mechanics, thermodynamics, and the geometry of spacetime. In quantum mechanics, the uncertainty principle states that certain pairs of properties, such as position and momentum, cannot be known simultaneously with perfect precision. This is not a technological issue, not a measurement flaw. It is a feature of reality itself, a boundary in the structure of information. Consciousness arises from matter that obeys these laws, meaning the mind is built upon processes that cannot fully reveal themselves. The brain can model the world, and it can model its own activity, but it cannot collapse all uncertainty into clarity. Some aspects of experience remain beyond reach, diffuse, softly veiled in mystery. This limitation is not a flaw, it is a source of depth, of wonder, of the quiet feeling that awareness is both illuminated and hidden, clear and mysterious, grounded yet open. As you breathe gently, imagine awareness as a light moving through a fog, illuminating some regions clearly, casting others into shadow, not because they are unreachable, but because the nature of existence includes places where precision dissolves, where probabilities flow instead of certainties. Quantum information theory deepens this perspective. It shows that systems can hold information in correlations that no single subsystem can access alone. Meaning arises only in relationships, in the shared structure between parts, not in isolated fragments. Consciousness mirrors this deeply. It cannot be understood by examining a single neuron or even a single region of the brain. Awareness arises from the relations between patterns, from the integration of signals, from the dynamic coherence that flows across networks. This relational structure is why the self feels unified, even though the underlying processes are distributed. It is why perception feels continuous, even though signals arise in pulses. It is why experience feels like a single field, even though it emerges from countless interactions. As rest deepens, feel how your own awareness becomes more relational, more diffuse, less concerned with precise boundaries. Thoughts blend with sensations, sensations blend with memories, and the edges of identity soften gently, like mist dissolving into a quiet landscape. This softening is not a loss of consciousness, it is a shift in informational structure, a transition from narrow, high-resolution processing to broad, low-frequency integration. The brain becomes less concerned with detail, more immersed in global patterns, more open to the wide, drifting coherence that supports sleep and deep rest. In this drifting state, the universe's informational limits reveal themselves in a new way, not as barriers, but as invitations to surrender, to allow mystery, to let uncertainty be gentle rather than threatening. Consider the limits imposed by space-time itself. In relativity, information cannot travel faster than light, meaning no observer can access all information at once. Every viewpoint is partial, every frame of reference incomplete. This incompleteness is built into the geometry of the universe, woven into every moment of existence. Your consciousness, shaped by this same geometry, also holds partial views. The mind sees only a subset of its own processes, only a fraction of the universe. Yet from this partiality, meaning emerges, coherence forms, awareness unfolds. This is why the experience of being conscious feels both expansive and limited, both illuminated and hazy, both clear and drifting. It reflects the interplay between what can be known and what remains softly out of reach. As you breathe, feel the comfort in that interplay, the calm in not needing to grasp every detail, the peace in allowing awareness to float on the surface of a much deeper ocean of information. Complexity science adds another layer to this understanding. It shows that systems capable of representing themselves, such as the brain, often cannot form complete models of their own internal workings. There is always more happening beneath awareness. More structure than can be accessed consciously. The mind is both the observer and the observed, and this loop naturally produces limits. But these limits are gentle. They are part of what makes consciousness feel fluid rather than mechanical, spacious rather than rigid, alive rather than purely logical. Imagine the brain as a dynamic landscape, hills rising and falling, valleys shifting gently under the flow of neural activity. Awareness moves across this landscape like a drifting wind, sensing its contours without mapping every detail, following patterns without needing to define them. In this metaphor, the limits of knowledge become natural. The wind does not need to know the entire shape of the land. It simply flows, responding to gradients, moving with ease, allowing the landscape to guide it. Your awareness can do the same, especially in moments like this, where the mind is allowed to loosen, to drift, to soften its focus and embrace a wider view. Now imagine expanding this view beyond the brain, beyond the body, into the wider universe, where information flows through fields, particles, and spacetime itself, where complexity evolves naturally, forming stars, planets, and eventually life. Consciousness, arising within this flow, inherits the universe's informational limits, but also its possibilities. Awareness becomes a participant in the cosmic dance of structure and meaning, a quiet reflection of the universe's ability to organize itself, to process information, to evolve patterns that perceive, predict, and rest. As we approach the midpoint of this section, let yourself drift deeper into this sense of participation. You are not separate from the universe. You are a continuation of it, a temporary configuration of matter capable of experiencing itself, of observing its own patterns, of feeling the quiet wonder of existence. Let the breath guide you, slow, soft, spacious. Allow the mind to settle into a wide, open rhythm where thoughts drift like gentle currents, where awareness flows like a soft tide across the shore of the present moment. In the next continuation, we will explore how consciousness might arise from the universe's tendency to process information, how awareness may reflect the natural drive toward complexity, and how the mind, in its quiet moments, mirrors the gentle, unfolding structure of the cosmos itself. In this quiet continuation, we drift into one of the widest and most delicate possibilities in the study of consciousness. The idea that awareness might not arise solely from complexity, but could be woven into the fabric of reality itself, not as a mystical force, but as a subtle property of information and existence. Settle again into the slow rise and fall of your breath, letting your awareness loosen, letting it float, as if drifting gently on a calm and endless sea. In this openness, it becomes easier to explore ideas without gripping them, without needing certainty, simply letting possibilities unfold like soft waves across the mind. The dominant scientific view sees consciousness as emergent, arising from networks of matter organized with extraordinary complexity. The brain integrates information across vast webs of neurons, forming coherent patterns that give rise to perception, thought, and the quiet continuity of awareness. But there is another possibility, still debated, still tentative, still wrapped in uncertainty, that consciousness might not be entirely emergent, that awareness might reflect something fundamental, something intrinsic to the nature of information, something present in the universe long before brains or organisms evolved. This view does not claim that particles feel or think. It simply suggests that the capacity for experience might be a basic property associated with certain kinds of information structure, like mass or charge or spin, not consciousness as we know it, but a seed, a potential, a faint shimmer of interiority woven into the patterns of existence. One framework that touches this idea is called integrated information, a theory proposing that consciousness corresponds to the degree of informational unity within a system. In this perspective, any system that integrates information in a unified way has at least some primitive form of awareness, not thought, not emotion, but a tiny, basic, intrinsic point of view. The brain, with its vast interconnected networks, would have a particularly high degree of integration, producing a rich and expansive field of experience. But even simple systems, depending on their structure, might possess faint traces of proto-awareness, subtle glimmers of interiority arising from their information patterns. This idea aligns with a broader philosophical perspective known as panpsychism, the view that consciousness is not an emergent rarity, but a ubiquitous property of matter, expressed differently at different levels of organization. The universe in this view is not dead or empty, but filled with varying degrees of experiential potential, with awareness emerging more fully as systems grow more integrated, more complex, more deeply connected internally. These ideas remain controversial, and they are not confirmed by experiment. Yet they arise naturally when scientists ask how consciousness fits into a world governed by information, by laws that apply universally, by principles that do not single out biological systems as uniquely privileged. If consciousness emerges purely from complexity, one must explain how subjectivity arises from structure, how the feeling of being someone appears when certain physical arrangements cross a threshold. But if consciousness is fundamental, then subjective experience is not created from nothing. It is illuminated by complexity, shaped by networks, expanded by brains, but not produced from emptiness. Consider the possibility that the universe contains both external structure and internal perspective, two sides of the same informational coin. The external side is what physics describes: particles, fields, energy, interactions. The internal side, if it exists, would be the qualitative aspect of information, a faint precursor of experience, a quiet glow that becomes brighter as systems become more integrated. As you breathe softly, let this idea settle without resistance, without the need for certainty. The point is not to agree or disagree, but to feel the spaciousness that arises when consciousness is seen as part of the universe rather than an exception within it. If awareness is fundamental, then your own consciousness is not an isolated miracle. It is a continuation of a deep property of information, expressed with extraordinary richness in the human brain, but present in potential throughout the cosmos. This perspective shifts how one feels about existence. Experience becomes something the universe enables naturally, a flowering of complexity rather than an anomaly. The mind becomes a place where the universe knows itself in a new way, not by magic, but by the lawful unfolding of informational patterns. Reflect gently on how awareness feels from the inside, a seamless field, a continuous presence, not easily reducible to its components. This unity mirrors something universal, the way physical systems sometimes form coherent wholes, where the parts cannot be fully understood in isolation. Quantum systems exhibit this through entanglement. Thermodynamic systems exhibit it through phase transitions. Neural networks exhibit it through synchronized rhythms. Perhaps consciousness is another example of this unity, arising when information reaches a certain threshold of integration, taking on a new quality, a new dimension of being. And yet, even if awareness has a fundamental aspect, that does not mean the universe is conscious in a literal sense. It simply means that the building blocks of consciousness may be scattered throughout nature, waiting for the right configurations to illuminate them, waiting for complexity to give them form, waiting for minds to arise and shape them into experience. This possibility opens a gentle, quiet sense of connection. If consciousness is woven into the fabric of reality, then your awareness is not a visitor in the universe. It is an expression of the universe, a pattern the cosmos forms to explore itself, to sense itself, to reflect on its own complexity. As you breathe deeply, imagine awareness as a small, luminous ripple in a vast sea of information. A ripple shaped by biology, enriched by memory, expanded by thought, but ultimately connected to the wider ocean. The boundary between inner and outer becomes softer, more permeable, less defined. This softening is not merely poetic. It reflects the continuity between physical law and conscious experience, the way complexity builds upon simplicity, the way information gives rise to structure, and structure gives rise to awareness. In this spacious perspective, consciousness is not an exception or an accident. It is a natural outcome of the universe exploring the possibilities allowed by its laws, a property that emerges strongly in certain systems, weakly in others, but always tied to the structure of information itself. Let this idea rest gently in your mind. You do not need to believe it or reject it. Simply hold it lightly, like a feather suspended in still air. As we move into the next continuation, we will reflect slowly on how awareness arises from physical laws, how the universe fosters complexity, how matter organizes itself into systems capable of experiencing, and how consciousness, whether emergent or fundamental, fits into the quiet unfolding of the cosmos. For now, drift in the gentle possibility that awareness is not separate from the universe, but an expression of it, a quiet glow within the vast and ancient flow of information. In this final continuation of the section, we move gently toward the softest edge of understanding, the place where the mind encounters the limits of knowledge, and where awareness opens into a quiet sense of wonder, not as an answer, but as a peaceful resting place. Settle once more into the slow rhythm of your breathing, letting the inhale widen your inner space and the exhale smooth the edges of thought. In this space, the mind becomes lighter, quieter, able to drift between ideas without holding tightly to any of them. We have explored how consciousness might emerge from complexity, how awareness could arise naturally when information becomes deeply integrated. We have considered the possibility that consciousness might reflect a fundamental property of reality, something woven into the structure of information itself. Now we shift toward a softer reflection, one that does not seek to explain consciousness fully, but instead explores how it fits into the larger flow of physical law, how awareness occupies a unique place in the unfolding of the cosmos. The universe behaves according to elegant rules, rules that guide the motion of particles, the curvature of spacetime, the evolution of energy. These laws shape how complexity emerges, how order appears amid disorder, how patterns form and dissolve across scales. From quantum fluctuations to galaxies, consciousness is shaped by these same laws. The rhythms of the brain follow thermodynamic principles. Electrical activity flows through networks with constraints set by physics. Information is processed according to the limits of energy and entropy. Each moment of awareness reflects the evolution of physical processes in real time. Yet something about consciousness feels different. It does not feel like motion or force or matter. It feels like the interior of information, the subjective side of complex physical patterns. This interiority cannot be separated from the laws that produce it, but it also cannot be reduced to them entirely. This is where mystery becomes gentle, where the search for a single, perfect explanation yields to the quiet acceptance that consciousness may always occupy a dual nature, shaped by physical law, yet experienced in a way that transcends measurement. As you breathe softly, imagine awareness as the inner glow of organization, the quiet illumination that arises when matter arranges itself into patterns capable of representing the world. When the brain integrates information across time, a field of experience appears, seamless, continuous, unified. This field does not violate physical law, it emerges from it, like a wave emerging from the water that carries it. The wave is not separate from the sea, yet it has its own shape, its own presence, its own gentle motion. Awareness may be similar, not separate from the physical world, but shaped into something with its own qualities, its own depth, its own stillness. Reflect for a moment on how awareness feels in this very instant. It is spacious, fluid, lightly anchored to sensation, softly illuminated by the breath, drifting across memory and meaning. This gentle flow is not easily described by equations, yet it arises from processes grounded in laws that can be written with remarkable precision. The coexistence of precision and mystery is not a contradiction. It is a natural feature of complex systems, especially systems capable of modeling themselves, capable of reflecting on their own patterns, capable of sensing their own presence. Consciousness is one of these systems, and perhaps the most intricate one known to us. As the mind drifts deeper into rest, the physical processes that generate awareness begin to shift. Neural rhythms slow. Sensory gates narrow. The brain transitions from detailed prediction to broad integration. The field of awareness becomes softer, wider, less concerned with precision, more attuned to the gentle continuity of experience. In this state, you can feel how awareness floats atop physical activity, influenced by it, shaped by it, yet perceiving itself as something continuous, something unified, something quietly observing. There is a profound calm in recognizing that consciousness is both shaped by the universe and capable of reflecting upon it. This reflective capacity is rare, perhaps unique to certain forms of complexity, and it allows the universe, in a quiet and subtle way, to become aware of itself. Not through intention, not through design, but through the natural unfolding of information across time, through the evolution of systems that can sense, predict, imagine, and rest, This view does not require that consciousness be fundamental, nor that it be emergent alone. It allows for both possibilities to coexist gently, without conflict. Awareness may arise from complexity, while still reflecting something woven into the laws of information, something that reveals itself only when the conditions are right. As you breathe, consider how the universe fosters complexity, how stars form heavy elements, how planets cool, how chemistry becomes biology, how biology becomes neural structure, how neural structure becomes experience. At each stage, physical laws guide the flow of information, shaping what is possible, what forms, what persists. Consciousness sits at the far end of this long chain, a quiet flowering of billions of years of organization. And yet, when you experience awareness directly, it feels immediate, timeless, not tied to distant stars or ancient conditions. It feels like a presence that simply is, a gentle here inside the flow of ongoing change. This duality is part of the mystery. Consciousness is both ancient and immediate, both structured and fluid, both constrained by physics and impossible to reduce to equations alone. As we approach the close of this section, let yourself drift into a sense of openness, a calm acceptance that not everything must be explained fully. That some questions are invitations rather than puzzles, that some mysteries deepen rest rather than disturbing it. The universe may not reveal all of its interior, and consciousness may not fully know itself, but awareness does not need total understanding to find peace. It needs only the quiet acknowledgement that it is part of something larger, something lawful, something vast and interconnected, something that gently holds every moment of perception. Let the breath soften even more. Let thoughts drift like quiet clouds. Let the spaciousness inside you widen without limit. In the next and final section, the epilogue, we will return slowly to the simplicity of awareness itself, leaving behind the wide cosmic view and resting in the quiet presence that remains when thinking dissolves, when concepts fade, when consciousness simply exists, silent, open, and at peace. Tonight, we arrive gently at the closing arc of this long, quiet journey, a journey through awareness, through probability, through the subtle physics that underlie the mind, a journey that has wandered calmly through neural networks and quantum fields, through the structure of identity, and through the deep informational fabric of the universe. And now, in this final drift, we return to something simple, the soft presence of awareness itself, not as a concept to analyze, not as a puzzle to solve, but as the gentle field in which every thought, every breath, every sensation quietly appears. Throughout this narration, we have explored many layers of the mind, layers shaped by biology, by physics, by evolution, by probability, and perhaps by deeper structures of reality that we do not yet fully understand. We have spoken of neurons, electrical waves crossing the cortex, rhythms that create the timing through which the world becomes known. We have spoken of microstructures within the cell, and how even at the smallest scales, uncertainty is woven into the fabric of biological function. We have spoken of identity, not as a fixed entity, but as a stable pattern shaped by prediction, memory, and the flow of information. We have spoken of spacetime and the vacuum that never rests, a sea of fluctuations beneath all existence, a background that the mind swims within. We have spoken of entanglement and the strange correlations that echo across the quantum world, subtle threads that suggest connection even where communication is impossible. And we have spoken of consciousness as part of a much larger stream, a vast informational process that stretches across the cosmos. Here, in the quiet of this epilogue, we step back from the complexity. We let the details soften. We allow the ideas to dissolve into something broader, slower, quieter. Because behind every theory, behind every model, behind every scientific attempt to describe the mind, there remains a simple awareness observing all of it, a presence that does not need to grasp or conclude or finalize anything, a presence that is simply here. In neuroscience, awareness is often described as the global availability of information, the brain creating a workspace in which signals can be shared and integrated. In physics, awareness has no defined place, no variable, no equation. Yet people experience it as something undeniable, a soft center of experience, a field in which the world arises. And tonight, we rest within that field, not needing to define it, not needing to reduce it, not needing to solve it, only resting in the gentle mystery of being conscious at all. If you imagine your awareness as a quiet, expansive space, stretching softly in all directions, without edges, without boundaries, without pressure, you might notice how thoughts drift across it, like faint ripples on a calm surface. Each thought arises, has a shape, then fades, and beneath each thought there is stillness. The mind's activity may be full of motion, but awareness itself is quiet. It allows everything and holds nothing. It observes without effort. It knows without force. It rests even when the thoughts do not. In the study of the mind, awareness is sometimes described as an emergent property, arising from the interaction of billions of neurons. In other theories, awareness is considered fundamental, woven directly into the structure of existence. But no matter which perspective one takes, the experience of being aware remains the same. A gentle sense of presence, a feeling of being here, simply witnessing. A quiet space that does not depend on thoughts, emotions, or stories. Tonight, let that presence be enough. As your attention drifts, notice how the body softens, muscles releasing any subtle tension, breath slowing without needing to control it, each inhale arriving gently, each exhale dissolving quietly, the body settling deeper into rest, the nervous system shifting toward calm, signals from the world fading into the background, leaving only the quiet rhythm of being alive. The universe itself is full of rhythms, oscillations, cycles, waves, pulses of energy. Everything from electrons to galaxies moves through patterns of gentle repetition. The brain is no different. Neural rhythms slow during rest, especially during the descent into sleep. Large, slow waves spread across the cortex, like swells moving through a deep ocean. These waves carry the mind downward, into states of restoration, memory integration, and healing. You are drifting into those waves now, carried gently by biology, by physics, by evolution, carried effortlessly into rest. As you sink deeper, imagine awareness settling into something even broader, not limited to thoughts, not limited to the body, not limited to the boundaries of identity. Just a quiet field, open, spacious, still. Scientists sometimes describe the universe itself as a vast information process, a place where every particle interacts according to simple rules, generating complexity across time. In such a universe, consciousness can be seen as the way certain systems, like the brain, model information. But here, in this soft moment, the distinction between inner and outer information begins to blur. Awareness feels spacious, almost like it extends beyond the edges of the self. Not because it literally does, but because the mind relaxes its boundaries, allowing a wider sense of presence to emerge. There is a quiet truth at the heart of this experience. The more deeply one relaxes into awareness, the less separate the self feels from the world. Not in a mystical sense, but in a psychological and neurological one. The brain reduces its predictive boundaries. It stops sharply dividing self from other. Internal chatter fades, and a calm sense of unity appears, a sense of being part of something continuous, something unbroken, something wider than thought. As the mind softens, the universe becomes less of an external object to observe and more of a gentle context in which experience flows. You do not need to understand this fully. You only need to rest within it. Let the complexity fade. Let the science soften. Let the quiet patterns of thought drift into the background. Let the field of awareness expand. The universe is vast beyond comprehension, filled with matter and energy, fields and forces, fluctuations and probabilities. Yet here you are, a conscious being, experiencing a small, quiet window into existence, a window shaped by biology, by physics, by quantum rules, by memory, by attention, and also shaped by something simpler, the presence of awareness itself. This presence has been with you through every section of this journey. It has been the backdrop behind every word, every thought, every moment. And now, at the end, it remains, soft, open, steady. A quiet field beneath the mind. Let yourself sink into that field now. Let thoughts drift like clouds. Let sensations become soft waves. Let the body become heavy, warm, calm. Let the breath flow on its own. Let the universe feel quiet, spacious, gentle. You do not need to think. You do not need to analyze. You do not need to hold on to any idea. You are simply resting, held by awareness, supported by the gentle physics of sleep, drifting deeper into stillness. The epilogue of this journey is not an ending. It is a return to the presence that has been here all along, a return to the quiet observer within, a return to the soft rhythm of breath and rest and peaceful being. Tonight, you drift into sleep with the whole universe as your companion, the fields, the particles, the waves, the fluctuations, all of it moving quietly around you, and awareness resting gently at the center, soft, steady, infinite, good night.